Chapter 327. Wuming activated his aura block and hid near the beach, while Gilgamesh hid behind a street lamp in his spiritual form. Wuming looked at the center of the beach. There was a blonde woman in black armor with a black mask on her face and a black holy sword in her hand. There was no doubt that this was Saber, swordsman, but it was still someone Wuming was familiar with. Artoria. Wuming frowned. Although Saber did not match Artoria's attribute, dark, but whether it was the dark holy sword in her hand or the familiar face under the mask, it all proved that she was indeed the Artoria he knew. It can't be wrong. That is Artoria. After carefully examining the dark holy sword in her hand, Wuming confirmed. But how did Artoria become like that? Wuming felt a little sad. Artoria was Wuming's first disciple, and Wuming liked this little girl, especially compared to the current Gil. However, the Artoria who appeared in front of Wuming at this moment was exuding a strong dark aura, and Wuming did not find anyone else around Artoria. Wuming suspected that Artoria's dark was caused by the destruction of her country. Wuming had checked, and with the British silver dragon, which was the historical record of Wuming's Britain, Artoria's country was destroyed in the end. With Wuming in Britain, the people lived and worked in peace. However, because of Wuming's disappearance, although Artoria did not send out knights to search for the Holy Grail like crazy, she still sent out a lot of knights. The knights who cared about Wuming were also very willing to search for the Holy Grail. However, due to Wuming's departure, Merlin's being trapped in Avalon, he deserved it, and Artoria's lack of power, the ambitious dukes began to target Artoria. Because of Guinevere's longing for Wuming, Morgan and the nobles used this as a fuse to put Guinevere on trial. After all, that era did not allow someone like Guinevere to exist. With the nobles as the leader and the church as support, the trial for Guinevere was carried out. Although the Knight of the Lake, Lancelot, forced the princess to escape, Guinevere, who was condemned, came back and was willing to be punished. Artoria was exhausted, and could not go against the era and the rumors of the people, so she had no choice but to burn Guinevere at the stake. The historical records were not very detailed. Lancelot robbed the execution ground and fought with the few remaining knights. Although he managed to escape, he was severely injured. The other knights suffered the same fate and suffered heavy casualties. The knights' faith, the departure of the British silver dragon, the disappearance of the Archmage Merlin, Artoria's inaction, Morgan's secret instigation, Guinevere's incident, the Knights of the Round Table killing each other, and the disappointment in the king. All of these led to the destruction of Britain. Artoria's expedition to Rome led to the rebellion of the knight Mordred, and the conspiracy of the nobles led by Morgan led to the Battle of Camlan. Originally, Silent Wonder thought that Artoria had turned into a dark form because of this, but it turned out that this was not the case. The thick darkness that clung to Artoria's body was like the evil of this world in the Eastwood Holy Grail. That's right. Wuming had previously investigated the interior of the Holy Grail in Winterwood City. The magic in the Holy Grail had all turned into the evil of this world, and its form was some black mud. Artoria's body was full of the evil of this world, as if she had been soaking in it for a long time. What the hell is going on? Does it have something to do with the Great Holy Grail in Winterwood City? After all, Wuming was an assassin without magic, so Wuming did not set up any detection spell in the Great Holy Grail in Winterwood City. However, Wuming had been checking the Great Holy Grail from time to time for the past 2 days. After all, the evil of this world in the Great Holy Grail was also a threat to Winterwood City. If it was released, it would be troublesome. Wuming became serious when he saw Artoria's dark form. It seems that I have to check the Great Holy Grail later, Wuming thought. At this time, Artoria, who was standing on the beach, opened her mouth. "You're here, you rascals. Since you're here, don't hide. You'll lose the chance to fight me. I, the Night King Artoria Pendragon, disdain to be associated with you." "Sure enough, it's you, Leah." Wuming was completely sure when he heard Artoria's voice. Artoria said something that was unclear, But Wuming knew one thing, that was, Artoria was trying to anger the servants who had come to the beach. In Wuming's perception, including Artoria and Wuming himself, there were a total of 7 servants here. That was why Artoria was provoking them. It seems that Artoria wants to kill everyone in one go. She's quite arrogant, just like Gil. Wuming smiled and looked at Artoria, who was standing in the center of the stage. So, who will show up for King Arthur's provocation? Wuming waited with interest. So that's how it is, the famous King Arthur? Then, I can't lose my reputation. Accompanied by a deep voice, a brown figure appeared. The clothes of the West Asian style looked particularly cool. A pair of decorative horns were worn on his head. His strong facial features and strong physique showed that this person was strong. I'm also a king. This time, I'm here as a rider. Please advise me, Spare. The muscular rider was quite polite. He was not arrogant like the other kings. Are you the only one, rider? Are the others just cowards? Artoria shouted loudly to provoke the other servants who were hiding. And it seemed that Artoria's provocation worked. Humph! In just one night there were 2 more mongrel cultivators, scumbags, proclaiming themselves kings. You really don't put this king in your eyes. Gilgamesh removed his spiritual form and showed his figure, standing on the street lamp and despising Artoria and Ryder. I can't continue to hide. A rather frivolous voice came, blue particles condensed, and Cuchulain appeared wearing a sage robe. Yo, I'm Castor, here at Saber's call. Looking at Cuchulain's sloppy appearance, Wuming helplessly touched his forehead. I knew it would be these 2 who would come out. After all, Gilgamesh's dignity did not allow others to provoke him again and again. Plus, the 2 kings provoked Gilgamesh, the only king. Gilgamesh would naturally show up. And Cuchulain did not show up in the first place. Wuming guessed that it had something to do with his master. Of course, as a caster, his mind calmed down a little. It's quite interesting. Let's not talk about Assassin and Berserker. Lancer also doesn't show up? Anyway, there are 3 knights. Artoria said without arrogance. Thank you. Chapter 328. Thank you for your respect. A relaxed, lowly voice was heard. A young girl wearing a cloak and holding a scythe in her hand came out of spiritual form and appeared in front of everyone. The large cloak covered most of the girl's delicate body. Her long purple hair was braided behind her head, and the front part of her long hair casually hung down from the cloak. Although the cloak covered most of the girl's body, one could still vaguely see the girl's petite body. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was a young girl. Oh, Lancer, it's a little girl. Are you interested in a cup of tea? It could only be said that Cuchulain was really good at flirting with women. After all, Cuchulain was still Cuchulain. Whether it was a Lancer or a caster, he would not change. Please allow me to refuse, pervert. Lancer refused without hesitation. She made a clear voice like a newborn baby. Very good, except for Berserker and Assassin. Is everyone here? Artoria nodded with satisfaction, and put her hands on the invisible holy sword in front of her. Well then, let us decide the victor tonight, heroes. After that, Artoria suddenly released her magical power. The surging magical power overturned the sand on the beach. It looked quite domineering. You really dare to say that, Saber? Cuchulain said, not to be outdone. But it's not a bad idea. Ryder crossed her arms in front of her chest and said rather sullenly. Humph. Gilgamesh did not say anything. He just looked down with a look of amusement. Lancer, on the other hand, was silent. Apparently, she agreed with Spare's proposal. That's right, it saves us a lot of trouble. Are you here, Assassin? Come out and fight with me. I know you can't be restrained by a mere assassin. Cuchulain shouted to the surrounding. The other servants seemed to be interested in the assassin and were not in a hurry to start a fight. Seriously, this idiot, is it because Sira remembered me? Wuming, who was hiding in the dark, said with a headache. After Wuming left Cuchulain, the intelligence erase skill was indeed activated. Cuchulain did not remember any information about Assassin. However, this did not stop Cuchulain from knowing Wuming's other identity. He was the eldest disciple of the Queen of the Demonic Realm, Cuchulain Sr., the warrior of Connaught, and the Tyrannosaurus of Queen Maeve. Information erasure only targeted information about Assassin, which meant that it targeted information about Jack the Ripper. Because Cuchulain had seen Wuming before, even if he lost any information about Jack the Ripper, he still knew that Assassin was his senior. It was the same as Wuming knowing that Castor was Cuchulain. Both sides only remembered the information of the other side when they were holding guns. For now, both sides only knew who the other side was. Of course, Wuming, who had learned the Loon magic trick, naturally had an advantage over Cuchulain. After that, Wuming also lost interest in continuing to hide. He gently jumped and revealed himself. "You are really an idiot, Castor," Wuming complained. "Ha ha ha, anyway, I am very satisfied to be able to fight with you." Cuchulain was not angry, but laughed and looked at Wuming full of fighting spirit. "So, let me introduce myself first. I am Jack the Ripper. This time, I came here as an assassin. Please advise me." Wuming did not pay attention to Cuchulain. Instead, he introduced himself and even exposed his real name. Ryder frowned as if he was not satisfied that a murderer could be on the same stage as them. However, after thinking about it, he was an assassin after all. It could be said that his courage was commendable. "Although I admire you directly, it is undoubtedly extremely stupid for you to expose yourself as an assassin," Ryder said dully. As for the others, Lancer did not speak much at the beginning and did not say anything. Gilgamesh was very dissatisfied with Ryder's evaluation of Wuming and looked at Ryder with murderous eyes. As for Artoria, since Wuming appeared, she fell into silence. "So, you are the assassin of this Holy Grail war," Artoria said without understanding the meaning, but she had been staring at Wuming with a complicated look. Wuming certainly knew why Artoria was looking at him like that. Without thinking, Artoria also recognized his identity. "That saber over there, he's this king's possession, teacher. Put away your invasive gaze." Gilgamesh saw that Artoria's eyes were a little strange when she looked at Wuming, so he said rather grumpily, "Is that so? Archer, although I don't know how you came to this conclusion, but he is my possession, knight." Artoria stared at Gilgamesh, and Gilgamesh did not show any weakness and stared back at Artoria. "Hey, what's going on? Why do I feel that Saber and Archer are about to fight because of you?" Cuchulain said jokingly. Wuming's response was only silence. Could this be the legendary Shuraba? Wu Ming thought with some uncertainty, and he even swallowed a mouthful of saliva. "It's none of your business, Castor. Do you want to leave as soon as possible?" Wuming stared at Cuchulain fiercely. However, Cuchulain picked up his staff and spun it twice. "I can't wait." Then he looked at Wuming full of fighting spirit. As a last resort, 2 daggers suddenly appeared in Wuming's vertical hands, which slipped out from Wuming's sleeves. "Then let me teach you a good lesson." On the other side, Lancer looked at Ryder, who was now vacant. "What, do you want to fight me?" Ryder looked at Lancer calmly. And at this moment, rustle, rustle, rustle! A roar that did not seem to be human came. Holding a strange stone weapon that looked like an axe and a knife, the 3-meter-tall little giant roared and jumped into the beach. "Rustle! Rustle! Rustle!" He roared again, turned his eyes to Lancer, and rushed up. TSK, the hero who killed the monster and the monster who was killed by the hero were swapped. "How ironic," Lancer said softly and rushed up to Berserker. "I say, aren't you guys looking down on me a little too much?" In an instant, Ryder jumped fiercely and instantly jumped between Berserker and Lancer. Lancer was rational enough to stop, but the irrational Berserker would not do the same. Berserker raised the axe in his hand and slammed it down toward Ryder. Looking at the way his muscles were tied, he must be a servant with high strength or even monster strength attribute skills. Ryder would be injured if he did not die. But, clank! A long bone stick like an elephant's trunk stretched out from the ground and blocked Berserker's attack. Rustle! Rustle! Berserker roared angrily because his attack was blocked. As expected of the irrational Berserker. In fact, I'm more suitable for this class, Ryder said lightly. Then, the bone colossus swung its trunk and flung Berserker away in an unbelievable manner. Then, Ryder looked at Lancer, and Lancer raised her scythe vigilantly. Since I can't fight with my old enemy, I'll fight with you guys. Ryder showed a tyrannical smile. His dark face revealed his big white teeth. Looking at the Berserker's smile, Lancer seemed to know why Ryder said that he was suitable for the Berserker class. Chapter 329. The timeline was pushed back to the day. Enosaka House. The manager of Winterwood City, Enosaka Toshiomi, elegantly held a glass of red wine with one hand behind his back. He stood in front of the window and looked into the distance. His eyebrows were full of haze. On the back of his hand that was holding the red wine, 3 scarlet incantations were engraved like mysterious circles. Knock, knock. There was a knock on the door. Please come in, Enosaka Toshiomi said. Creak. The door opened with the sound of the door opening. A young priest walked in. If Wuming was here, he would definitely recognize him. He was the priest that Wuming met at the Chinese restaurant that day. His name was Yen Fengkiri, the son of the old priest that Wuming met at the church in Winterwood City. Kiri, what's the matter? Enosaka Toshiomi turned around and looked. The haze between his eyebrows disappeared a lot. Sensei, a suspected servant was found near Tabaki Amusement Park. Yen Fengkiri said very respectfully. Is it confirmed? Enosaka Toshiomi said seriously. Yes, according to my father's information, it is currently confirmed to be Archer. It is very likely to be a king. Yen Fengkiri said carefully, afraid to make his sensei angry. Sure enough, after Enosaka Toshiomi heard it, the haze between his eyebrows gathered again. It was taken by others. I was too careless. I didn't expect that in addition to the world's first snake fossil, there would be a holy relic that could make the most ancient king appear. Enosaka Toshiomi said rather angrily. However, this is also expected. Calm down. But in an instant, Enosaka Toshiomi calmed down. After all, the Enosaka family's motto was to always be elegant. However, Yen Fengkiri had a feeling that Enosaka Toshiomi was holding on. That's right. Teacher has successfully summoned another king. Yen Feng and Chili flattered from the side. However, Enosaka Toshiomi's expression at the moment was somewhat helpless. In an instant, brown particles appeared. Ryder dispelled his spiritual form and stood beside Enosaka Toshiomi. I know you are disappointed to summon me. Ryder's dull voice came. No. How could that be, my king? Toshiomi Inaka bowed to Ryder. After all, your original target was the ancient king. I'm nothing compared to the ancient king. I can't even compare to my rival, the one from the Macedonian kingdom, Ryder said in a low voice, although it seemed like he was belittling himself. Your Majesty, how could Toshiomi Inaka not know? The king in front of him was indeed inferior to the oldest king, and the difference was huge. You don't have to say too much. The only thing I can do is to help you obtain victory in the Holy Grail War and fulfill my own wish of being able to fight against my old enemy once again. After saying that, Ryder's mind went blank as he thought about his formidable enemy. After saying that, Ryder's spirit form disappeared. After noticing that Ryder had left the room, Yen Fengili was slightly puzzled. Teacher, since the king is weak, why did you summon this king? Taking a look at Yen Fengqi, Toshimi turned his head and looked into the distance again. Qi Li, Ryder's combat power is indeed inferior to the ancient king, but don't underestimate him. Toshiomi Inaka maintained his smile. Yanfeng Qili still didn't understand, but he knew that at least Ryder wasn't as mediocre as his appearance suggested. The most important thing is that Ryder is very obedient. Yanfeng Qili suddenly understood. Toshiomi Inaka continued to smile as he looked into the distance. The Holy Grail, a Mito residence. In the house that was completely normal, Lancer sat on the sofa and watched TV. After a while, a soft and gentle voice came. That, Sister Anna, the food is ready. Come and eat together. A black-haired loli with energetic eyes stuck her head out and looked at Lancer, who was sitting on the sofa. The black-haired loli was Sakura Inaka. Because she was adopted by the Amito family, she changed her name to Sakura Madu. Okay, I know, Anna said faintly and sat at the table with Sakura Madu. Although servants didn't need to eat, Lancer still ate like an ordinary person to make his little master more relaxed. Sakura Madu looked at Lancer, who buried his head in eating, then looked at the command seal on the back of her hand and smiled. I'm so happy to be able to meet Sister Anna, Sakura Madu said. However, the young Sakura Madu didn't notice that Lancer, who was sitting opposite Sakura Madu, was shocked, but he quickly returned to normal. After dinner, Sakura Madu took the initiative to clean up the dishes. Then, Sister Anna, I'll go to the basement later and clean it up, Sakura Madu said softly. This was because Tong Ying had been doing this for the past few days. She had been cleaning the rocks. The basement is full of stones. I'll go to the basement to clean up all the stones. Suddenly, Lancer said. Is that okay? I want to let Sister Anna rest more. Sister Anna saved me. I can do these things. Sister Anna just needs to participate in the Holy Grail War. Sakura Madu said worriedly, and then looked at Lancer with a smile. Lancer couldn't help but look at Sakura Madu, and remembered the scene when he was summoned. Countless insects were rolling over. A skinny and terrifying old man threw Sakura Madu into the insect pile, and a man struggled to summon a servant. However, Lancer found that he was summoned by Sakura Madu, but the summoning magic was provided by that man. Gagaga. Yenya, I didn't think that your death could be useful. Very well, then let Sakura fight in your place. The skinny and terrifying old man made a strange laugh. However, swoosh. With the flash of the sword, Sakura Madu, who was not transformed by the insects, found that the squirming insects stopped moving. Suddenly, Tanjing opened her eyes, which had been shut in fright, and looked at the cloaked young lady in front of her. Sister, are you here to save me? Sakura Madu's little face was crying and looked at Lancer blankly. Yes, my name is Anna. Lancer looked at Sakura Madu's crying face and was slightly moved. Gagaga. Unknown servant, I think it's better if you cooperate with me. This way, you and I can get the Holy Grail. The skinny and terrifying old man was obviously a magician, but he was not afraid of the dangerous weapon called servant at all. Lancer glanced at the old man and held Sakura Madu in his arms. Then, the sickle in his hand moved, and the old man was instantly dismembered. Gagaga. Unknown servant, you are indeed strong, but this is my magic workshop. Since you don't want to cooperate, then be devoured by my insects. The old man's hoarse and terrifying voice came from all around. In an instant, countless insects ran out of nowhere and rushed to Lancer. Lancer held Sakura Madu in one hand and covered her face, trying not to let Sakura Madu see these insects. Then, Lancer directly took off the hood of his cloak, and two golden pupils like a horizontal cuboid looked at these insects. In an instant, countless things that were seen by this pair of eyes were petrified. What? Magic eye? And it's a gem? Then, in the old man's surprised voice, all the basement was petrified. Gagaga. Do you think you can kill me like this? Too naive. I won't be polite and will take your pair of demonic eyes. Although everything in the basement was petrified, the old man's voice still echoed in the basement. Is that so? Lancer said faintly. Then, He raised the sickle in his hand and slashed at the man who summoned him before. Ah! What's going on? How did you find me? A fat and disgusting insect fell out of the man's heart. It had to be said that the servant summoned at the cost of his own life was indeed powerful. Lancer easily sensed something hidden in the dead man's heart. Goodbye. Lancer looked at the fat insect with his magic eye. Lancer's calm voice was full of serenity. No. No. How can this be? My trace. My. The voice stopped abruptly and the fat insect was petrified. Lancer held Sakuramadu and walked step by step toward the basement door. Bang! When he walked near the statue of the fat insect, the statue broke. Chapter 330. After coming back to his senses, Lancer glanced at Tanjing. You don't have to do that anymore. Have a good rest. After all, you are my master. Lancer said lightly and turned his head away. He didn't dare to look at Sakuramadu. Sakuramadu froze for a moment, then showed a smile. I like Anna Nasan the most, Sakuramadu said and threw herself into Lancer's arms. Lancer hugged Sakuramadu and looked at Sakuramadu's smiling face. He was stunned for a moment and hugged Sakuramadu. I will protect you, Sakura. Amiya Mansion. Amiya Kuritsugu cleaned the gun and performed the daily maintenance. Skillfully disassembled, skillfully installed, and with a few clicks, the gun that was originally disassembled was reassembled. Then, a woman came in. What's wrong, Mommy? Amiya Kuritsugu asked without looking back. Mommy could be regarded as his most trusted person, so there was no need to be vigilant. Berserker seems to have found the enemy, it should be assassin. The woman named Mommy Cure said. Amiya Kuritsugu frowned. Although Amiya Kuritsugu didn't want to use this place as a stronghold, it was just a temporary base, but he didn't expect it to be discovered by the enemy servant so quickly. It seems that assassin has a unique ability in detection. Amiya Kuritsugu stood up. Wuming expressed his helplessness. He just wanted to come back and have a look. Let Berserker be the bait and see if it can lead the enemy away. Amiya Kuritsugu said and picked up the gun and equipped it. Yes. Mommy Cure went out. Then, she looked at the red mark on the back of her hand. The mark was quite eye-catching. It was 3 strange command seals. Amiya Kuritsugu wore gloves to cover the mark. Soon, Takeo Jiyu returned. Did something happen? Amiya Kuritsugu asked. No, assassin retreated by herself, Takeo Kuyu said. Hurry up and leave this place. Find another base. Amiya Kuritsugu frowned. Yes. Amiya Kuritsugu took Kuyumemi and the spiritualized Berserker to find a new base. Because he wasn't sure if there was an assassin following them, Amiya Kuritsugu arranged a simple detection technique around them. Although it might not be useful against assassin, it was better than nothing. After taking a break, Amiya Kuritsugu lit a cigarette. Kuritsugu, madam, Kuyutake said worriedly. If nothing goes wrong, we'll arrive soon. Amiya Kuritsugu puffed out a mouthful of smoke. It was obvious that he was an old smoker. Then I'll go to the airport to check. Amiya Kuritsugu nodded, and then Takeo Kuyutake left. Only Amiya Kuritsugu was left in the room. It's just that I always have a bad feeling. After a while, Takeo Kuyutake came back anxiously. Not good, Kuritsugu, something happened to Madam. Amiya Kuritsugu closed his eyes helplessly. At night, Amiya Kuritsugu took Takeo Kuyutake to the beach. According to Takeo Kuyutake's report, Saber came here as soon as they got off the plane. Amiya Kuritsugu came alone to a tall building with a panoramic view of the beach. Takeo Kuyutake lurked near the beach with the spiritualized Berserker. Picking up the sniper rifle, Amiya Kuritsugu saw Saber. An unknown black armor covered Saber's whole body, and a faint black mist spread from Saber's body. Only Saber's master, Amiya Kuritsugu's wife, Alice Phil, was missing. Saber is different from before. Ali disappeared. What's going on? Amiya Kiritsugu said rather irritably. Yes, Saber's master was Alice Phil, not Amiya Kiritsugu. The House of Einstein Barons wanted to hire the magician-killer Amiya Kiritsugu to carry out this Holy Grail war. Because of money, Amiya Kiritsugu accepted the hire and married into the House of Einstein Barons. After a few years of getting along, Amiya Kiritsugu and Alice Phil had sparks of love, and the two had children. However, when summoning servants a few days ago, Alice Phil was suddenly chosen by the Holy Grail, and a stigmata appeared on her hand. Amiya Kiritsugu had been chosen a long time ago, and a stigmata appeared on his hand when he married into the House of Einstein Barons. Therefore, the head of the House of Einstein Barons, Ahad, let the two of them summon servants together. This could be regarded as cheating, but because of this, the House of Einstein Barons had two servants, Saber with the best attributes, and Berserker with the strongest combat power. In this way, Amiya Kiritsugu chose to take Berserker, who was not rational and easy to control, to come to Winterwood in Japan in advance and set up an ambush in advance, and Alice Phil came to Winterwood with Saber later. However, according to Kuyumamiya's report, Saber got off the plane alone, and there was no trace of Alice Phil beside her. And Saber also changed from the original Noble Knight King to the current appearance. "Ali, where did you go?" Amiya Kiritsugu murmured. In any case, Amiya Kiritsugu only had one goal, to win the Holy Grail War. Looking at the Night King began to provoke the surrounding servants. One after another servants appeared, and even assassin appeared. In that case, Mamiya, let Berserker also participate in the chaos. Amiya Kiritsugu said to the communication device. After all, Amiya Kiritsugu was not a magician who relied on servants. His goal was the master of these servants. Yes. Kuyumamiya's voice came from the other side of the communication device. Because of Amiya Kiritsugu's instructions, Kuyumamiya could also command Berserker. Seeing Berserker break into the 6 servants, Amiya Kiritsugu picked up the sniper rifle. Except for those special servants, the servants could not be far away from the master, and the other masters must be hiding in the surroundings, near the beach. What Amiya Kiritsugu wanted to do now was to use the 7 servants to lure out the master's traces. Amiya Kiritsugu, who knew Berserker's strength, was not worried that Berserker would have an accident. At worst, he could use the command seal. After all, Berserker was not rational, and there was no need to use the command seal to contain Berserker. At the same time, Sakura Madu was now hiding inside a container on the beach. Although she was afraid, Sakura Madu still looked at Lancer in the distance through the gap of the door. "You hide inside, no matter what happens, don't come out." This was Lancer's first words to Sakura Madu, and Sakura Madu remembered it firmly. "Anna Nasan." Sakura Madu anxiously held her small hand with the command seal, and said anxiously. Of course, this was for Sakura Madu as a child, but for Kenneth as a magician, it was different. He was very hidden. Kenneth and Sora were in a house not far from the beach, and the owner of the house had been hypnotized by Kenneth. Through the familiar, Kenneth could clearly see the big battlefield of the 7 servants. "Is it really okay to let Castor get involved like this, Kenneth?" Sora naturally also had a familiar, and she could also see the scuffle on the beach. After all, the servants of the other masters have already appeared, and Castor also said that he is suitable for the battlefield, plus I am the head of the house of Akipalud, naturally, I can't lose the name of the aristocracy. Kenneth said proudly. "As long as you are happy," Sora said indifferently. Although Castor was indeed handsome, Sora was not the kind of person who would casually fall in love with a dead person. She was a proud noble. At this time, the situation on the battlefield changed. Chapter 331. Wuming and Cuculin fought fiercely, but Wuming was gradually losing ground. "Not bad, you guy," Wuming said provocatively, and then suddenly separated from Castor. "Well, after all, this is also a Loon Rune trick, don't say I cheated, brother," Cuchulain waved his flaming staff a few times and looked at Wu Ming proudly. Yes, using the Lune Rune to strengthen his weapon, and then using the Lune Rune to increase his dexterity to a speed comparable to Wu Ming's, Cuchulain could be said to be suppressing Wu Ming. After all, the attributes brought by the assassin rank are still too weak, especially in a frontal battle, Wu Ming said helplessly as he swung the dagger in his hand. Same here, same here. How nice would it be if I could use a gun right now? Compared to magic, I still prefer using a gun. Cuchulain looked at Wu Ming with a wicked smile. In that case, don't blame me for cheating, Cuchulain. Wu Ming smiled, and the two daggers in his hands disappeared. Then a black ripple opened beside Wu Ming, and in an instant, Wu Ming inserted his hand into it. Black ripple? Is this me? Wu Ming had the same teacher, so Cuchulain naturally knew him very well. Silence had a portable space made of Lune Runes, and almost all of his treasures were stored in this space. This was a story passed down in Ireland. Many people didn't know the details, but Cuchulain knew that if he was willing to work hard, the so-called Lune Rune space could be created. Yes, this is the space where my treasures are stored, and I can use the weapons inside. Saying so, a smile appeared on his face, but Cuchulain felt that this smile was ridiculing him. Whoosh! Wu Ming pulled out a long spear from the black ripples. The long spear made swishing sounds in the air. The spear of the World Tree, I knew it! Cuchulain secretly smacked his lips, with a "I should have known" look on his face. Don't say that I cheated, this is the benefit of the undead. That's right, Wu Ming had taken out the spear of the World Tree, Yggdrasil. Wu Ming meant that the undead could create a clone and turn it into a servant, and it would not restrict itself according to the rank. TSK. Wouldn't that make you a lancer with an assassin rank? Cuchulain protested. That was right. This was also the reason why Wu Ming insisted on keeping the Draconist relic. All of his weapons and items were inside. This is not the case. My ability value is still assassin's ability value. My skills and relics are also assassins. At best, I can only say that I am an assassin with a long spear. Wu Ming was not wrong. At this moment, Wu Ming's ability value, skills, and relics were all Assassin Jack the Ripper's. Well, take this, caster. With Wu Ming's shout, the white dragon's spear swept towards Cuchulain. Damn it! Don't underestimate me, this is part of the fun. Cuchulain was not angry. Instead, he was delighted. He waved his flaming staff and met the swimming dragon's spear. At this time, countless explosions were heard, and the storm caused by the explosions stopped both of them. While Cuchulain and Wu Ming were fighting, Rider, Lancer, and Berserker were fighting. At this moment, Rider was standing on a small giant elephant. Countless skeletons poured out of the ground and swept towards Lancer and Berserker. After all, Berserker was not rational. Even if his attributes were quite good, Berserker only cared about the countless skeletons in front of him. However, each of the skeletons could be restored after being broken apart. Rider stood on the giant bone elephant, looked at Berserker indifferently, shook his head, and then looked at Lancer. After all, Lancer was also unable to fight against four hands with two fists. In the face of the skeleton army that appeared almost all the time, Lancer was also barely able to resist. Enosaka Residence. As Enosaka Residence was not far from the beach, Toshimi Enosaka did not need to go there. Instead, he released his familiar to watch Rider's battle on the beach at home. Yen Fengqi stood respectfully beside Toshimi Enosaka and also released his familiar to observe. Chili, you have a lot of doubts, right? Toshimi Enosaka asked elegantly. Yes, sensei. That king is also here. Are you so assured to let Rider cause trouble? Yen Fengqi said. That is a king. He has self-respect. Don't worry, Chili. If anything happens, I will use the command spell to summon Rider back. Also, don't underestimate Rider. He is an existence that can be compared to the Conqueror King. Although he is not Archer's opponent, the Holy Grail War is not only a test of servants, but also a battle between magicians. Yen Fengqi and Osaka understood Toshimi and Osaka's words. Then, Sensei, I will go and prepare. How about it? Yen Fengqi and Osaka asked respectfully. Okay, go. Yen Fengqi and Osaka nodded and left. After Yen Fengqi and Osaka left, Toshimi and Osaka's face was gloomy. The reason he let Ryder go was because Ryder was almost abandoned by Toshimi and Osaka. After all, in front of the king, all servants were ants. The only way was to make a move on the master. I want to see who can summon him before me. I, Toshimi and Osaka, will not be merciful to such a nameless person. However, if Toshimi and Osaka knew that Archer's master was assassin, who knows how happy he would be back on the battlefield? Ryder looked at Lancer. In his perception, all the soldiers that were hit by Lancer were unable to recover. A weapon that can restrain immortality? Ryder looked at Lancer's scythe and said. His soldiers all had strong immortality and indestructibility. The only disadvantage was that they could be restrained by weapons or attributes that could restrain immortality. It seems that you are not a simple person, Lancer. Ryder commented. But don't think that my soldiers are too simple. With that said, the soldiers that attacked Lancer began to change. All the soldiers that were about to be hit by Lancer's scythe split themselves along the incision of the scythe, and then instantly reformed. Lancer's scythe went through them. Lancer was shocked by the strange scene and was attacked by the reorganized soldiers. Bang! Lancer was heavily hit and flew out. Every soldier was the best of the best. Their strength was generally at the strength of a C-class, and some had even reached B-class. Lancer quickly got up and rubbed his stomach. He looked at the soldiers that had surrounded him with a complicated expression. Then, all of you will turn into stone, Lancer said faintly. He then put his hand on his hat and was about to take off his hood. At this time, countless explosions were heard. Ryder and Lancer both looked at the place where the explosions occurred. Berserker was the only one who was still attacking the skeleton soldiers. Chapter 332. Artoria and Gilgamesh were glaring at each other. Even when the others had started fighting, they were still glaring at each other. How vile! This king thought you were a clown. I didn't expect you to be a thief. Do you really want to steal this king's possession, teacher, so badly? Gilgamesh said arrogantly. I don't know where you got that conclusion from, but he is my possession, knight. This will never change. You, on the other hand, are a king? Don't you dare tell me your real name? Artoria sneered at Gilgamesh. Humph! You call yourself king in front of this king. You want to steal this king's possession in front of him. You don't know this king's name in front of this king. You don't deserve to live anymore, Saber. Gilgamesh waved his hand, and several golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. A few relics extended and attacked Artoria. However, bam, 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 bam. Artoria swung the blackened Excalibur and deflected the treasures that were flying toward her. Are they all relics? No wonder you dare to talk nonsense here. Artoria looked at the weapons that were deflected to the side and said in shock. Now you know how powerful this king is. However, this won't change your death. Saber, disappear under my attack. Gilgamesh waved his hand again. This time, dozens of golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. Dozens of relics were flying toward Artoria. How ridiculous, Archer! Do you think you can defeat me with just this? Artoria raised her holy sword, and countless magic power gathered on the sword. It looked like she was going to release a relic, but Gilgamesh didn't think so. In the blink of an eye, a huge black magic sword was formed. Artoria raised the black magic sword and swung it lightly. The treasures that were flying towards Artoria were all knocked away. You condensed your noble relic on the sword and didn't use it? Well done, Saber. It would be too boring if you just left like that. Gilgamesh could tell the truth about the Mana Greatsword at a glance. When Wu Ming used his sword, He liked to condense his relic on his sword and not release it. He used it as a giant sword. Well, Artoria learned it from Wuming. However, Gilgamesh knew that it was Wuming's trick. Therefore, he was even more annoyed when Artoria said that she was his possession. Didn't that prove that they were related? Artoria, on the other hand, did not respond to Gilgamesh's compliment. If that's all you've got, I advise you to return to the Valhalla as soon as possible. In the face of Artoria's ridicule, Gilgamesh was already annoyed by the relationship between Wuming and Artoria. Like a fuse, Gilgamesh was furious again. Very well, thief, you've completely angered me. Gilgamesh waved his hands and his huge chest swayed, which made Artoria a little annoyed. In an instant, countless golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. If one really wanted to count, there were at least hundreds of them. Go to hell, mongrel! Hundreds of relics that were grade B and above bombarded Artoria's place. As the name implied, the beach of Winterwood City was destroyed. The bombardment also affected the other servants. Wuming, Cuchulainn, Ryder, and Lancer all stopped what they were doing and looked over. These are all treasures. As a king, Ryder could naturally recognize the objects that were being bombarded indiscriminately. Lancer did not speak, but took the opportunity to jump back nimbly, widening the distance between him and Ryder, and then left directly. If the 7 servants really fought, Sakuramadu might be affected. Lancer thought so and decided to retreat first. Ryder did not want to stop Lancer from leaving. He just glanced at Sakuramadu's place and no longer paid attention to it. He, who had summoned countless soldiers, had already found Sakuramadu's position. However, due to his dignity as a king, Ryder did not attack Sakuramadu. My king, retreat first. There's no need to show your cards here. Toshiomi Enosaka's voice came into Ryder's ears. Yes, I know. Then, the soldiers and the giant elephant beside Ryder sank into the ground and disappeared. Ryder, on the other hand, turned into a spirit and left. On the other side. Let Berserker retreat. Amiya Kiritsugu said to Kuyumemi on the other side of the communicator. Yes, Kiritsugu. Later, Berserker, who was preparing to attack Gilgamesh because he could not find the target, stopped and jumped away from the beach. On the other side of Wuming. Caster, it's time to retreat. Kenneth's voice came. Yes, I'll go now, master. Cuchulainn said rather unhappily. That's not like you. Wuming looked at Cuchulainn. I can't help it. I'm a caster now. Compared to fighting, I want to guide my master to the right path. Cuchulainn smiled. After becoming a caster, Cuchulainn's fighting heart also calmed down. If he did not meet Wuming, he was afraid that Cuchulainn would really fight as a caster. But listening to your voice, your master is not the kind of guy who can be guided by you. Wuming didn't attack, but put the gun in his hand into the black ripples. Well, you're right, but since master asked me to leave, then that's it. Next time, let's fight to the death. After saying that, Cuchulainn turned into a spirit and left. The reason why Wuming didn't fight with Cuchulainn was not that he didn't want to continue to fight with Cuchulainn, nor was it that the gunman's mind was in a mess. It was because Artoria and Gilgamesh were both disciples that Wuming cared about. Wuming wouldn't allow them to kill each other. Thinking so, Wuming went to the place where the explosion had already ended and produced countless smoke and dust. At this moment, Artoria, who was in the center of the explosion, was wrapped in a large amount of black magic fog, as if she was a servant incarnate. Enough magic turned into a magic fog to offset Gilgamesh's noble phantasms. Then, Artoria waved the Excalibur, and a huge magic impact dispersed the smoke and dust caused by the explosion. You're quite capable, Saber. You formed a magic defense to offset the explosion caused by my noble phantasms. Although Gilgamesh said so, he was already wary of Artoria. How much magic did she have to be able to defend against the explosion of so many noble phantasms? Anyway, Gilgamesh knew that it was impossible for him to do it. The magic required was too great, unless he had the Holy Grail. "Since your attack is over, it's my turn," Artoria said, raising the Excalibur in her hand, and more magic gathered on the holy sword than before. "Is this guy's magic infinite?" Gilgamesh frowned. Then, the golden ripples behind him opened. However, this time, what appeared in the golden ripples was no longer a weapon, but a defensive gear. At this time, 2 chains suddenly appeared behind Gilgamesh and Artoria, entangling them. "Okay, enough is enough." Wooming's voice came. Chapter 333. A black ripple appeared behind Artoria and Gilgamesh, and the chains came out from it. On the other side, Wooming grabbed 2 chains with one hand, and the chains went into the black ripple. It was the fake Enkidu from Wooming's Draconis. Wooming, who appeared as an assassin, did not bring Enkidu with him. Although the fake Enkidu was not as good as the real Enkidu, it could still play a certain role. Artoria put away the sacred sword, and Gilgamesh put away the gate of Babylon, which was the best proof. Gilgamesh looked at the chains that were tightly wrapped around him, and said in a displeased tone. Of course, she could tell that this was her friend's avatar, and it was fake. Gilgamesh hated fake avatars the most. Artoria, on the other hand, did not say anything. This fake chain was made with the original Enkidu, so it only kept its special attack mode against divinity, which was why Gilgamesh was wrapped around by the chain. Artoria, on the other hand, had the red dragon blood in her veins. The chain was nothing more than a sturdy chain. Wooming walked between the two and looked at them. "Sit down and talk. After all, both of you are my disciples." As soon as Wooming said that, Artoria and Gilgamesh were shocked and looked at each other in disbelief. Wooming, who had almost guessed the result, could only smile awkwardly. The next day, in the small mansion that Wooming bought, Gilgamesh was sitting on his personal chair, looking angry, while Wooming was reading the newspaper in a relaxed manner. A natural gas explosion near the beach in Winterwood City. "Why is it always a natural gas explosion?" Wooming laughed. At the same time, Wooming looked at Gilgamesh. Since Gilgamesh came back yesterday, Gilgamesh had been throwing a tantrum. Well, a girl throwing a tantrum. If the male version of Gilgamesh was here, Wooming would have slapped him a long time ago. Therefore, girls needed to be coaxed, even if they were his disciples. "Is Gilgamesh still angry?" Wooming asked softly. Gilgamesh did not say anything. He crossed his arms and closed his eyes. But Wooming could understand. First, he hid the fact that Artoria was Wooming's disciple deceit. Then he used Gilgamesh's friend against Gilgamesh insult, and even defended Artoria from Gilgamesh's point of view. All kinds of signs caused Gilgamesh to be angry, which was understandable. "I didn't mean to hide it deliberately. After all, I have experienced too many things. If you told me everything, I would be very busy." As Gilgamesh's teacher, Wooming could naturally see what Gilgamesh was upset about. Then, Wooming continued. "And the reason why you used Enkidu was because you were too disobedient." Wooming suddenly became strict. Gilgamesh was slightly moved, but he still kept silent. Only his eyes opened. "Do you remember our purpose? It's not the Holy Grail War, but to investigate the source of the black mud. It's not wrong for you to blindly go to war with the servants, but there must be a limit to everything. You are easily angered." Wooming gently taught Gilgamesh, as if they had returned to the past. "As for letting Artoria go, that's because Artoria must be related to our target this time. You know, we should cast a long line to catch a big fish." Wooming advised earnestly, hoping that Gilgamesh could accept it. Even so, it can't make this king calm down." Although Gilgamesh said that, Wooming, who knew her well, knew that her anger had mostly dissipated. A Uruk Hyunryong feast. Wooming said the name of a set of dishes. Because Wooming was a good cook in Uruk, the set of dishes was once famous in Uruk, and even in Babylonia. Therefore, almost everyone who tasted it said that if they could eat it again, they would dare to go to hell, which was enough to show Wu Ming's superb cooking. Gilgamesh swallowed, thought for a moment, and said, "Deal." Wu Ming showed a victorious smile. Yuanzhong Mountain. Wu Ming came here and was ready to check the Great Holy Grail again. Is there another source of the black mud? Walking on the way to the Great Holy Grail, Wu Ming thought. After all, the black mud inside the Great Holy Grail was the evil of this world, and as long as there were humans, there was still a source of evil, then the evil of this world would not go extinct. It could be said that as long as humans existed, the evil of this world would not go extinct. But I always have a bad feeling. When he came to the innermost part of the Great Holy Grail, Wu Ming saw a figure. Artoria? Yes, Wu Ming saw Artoria. Artoria was wearing black armor. Her hands were on the sword inserted in the ground, as if waiting for something. What's going on? Artoria? Wu Ming frowned and asked Artoria. However, Artoria did not speak. She just opened her closed eyes and looked at Wu Ming with her golden eyes full of severity and tyranny. I didn't expect you to find this place, assassin. Suddenly, a man's voice came from the nearby shadow. Hearing this voice, Wu Ming's heart was filled with a sense of crisis. This feeling, Wu Ming instantly took out the meteor silver and looked at the shadow with 200% vigilance. It seems that you're not an ordinary servant. I'm afraid that Jack the Ripper isn't your real name. A young man with a green top hat, a green coat and a gentle smile, who looked less than 30 years old, came out from the shadow. Although he was smiling, Wu Ming could feel the filth in his body. Wu Ming did not ask, "Who are you?" or anything like that. It was obvious that he was an enemy that would not rest until one of them was dead. With his A-class agility, Wu Ming instantly rushed in front of the tall hat man, and Wu Ming raised his sword and was about to slash down. However, when Wu Ming's sword was still a little bit away from the tall hat man, Wu Ming's sword was bounced off. Clang! Wu Ming looked at Artoria, who used her black holy sword to bounce off his sword, and quickly retreated. He quickly opened up the distance between them. Artoria put down her holy sword and stood in front of the tall hat man to protect him. This made Wu Ming could not help but frown. Although I don't know why you are so hostile to me, but it seems that I also hate you, assassin. The tall hat man continued to smile as if nothing had happened. Let me introduce myself first. I am Rafe Lionel Florence. Nice to meet you, assassin. Chapter 334. Rafe Lionel Florence. Wu Ming murmured the name softly. Florence? The 72 demon gods. Wu Ming pondered carefully. Was it related to Solomon, or was it just a coincidence? To be honest, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I'm just here to follow the orders of our king. Rafe spread out his hands, showing that he didn't want to fight. But your goal is to destroy the world, right? As long as you have such a goal, you are destined to be my enemy. Wu Ming raised the meteor silver with one hand and pointed it at Wu Ming. Ha ha! You're right. I can't wait to kill you, assassin. Rafe laughed and looked at Wu Ming with a twisted face. Go, Saber! Rafe ordered, and Artoria rushed toward Wu Ming. Wu Ming frowned and raised his sword toward Artoria. Wu Ming was wondering why Artoria became like this, but it seemed that it was because of this guy named Rafe. Bang! 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 Wu Ming was knocked away by Artoria's attack. Artoria was a saber, and her attributes were much higher than Wu Ming's assassin. It could be said that Wu Ming had never felt so weak before. Artoria didn't chase after Wu Ming after knocking him away. Wu Ming steadied himself and didn't rush to fight Artoria. Instead, he looked at Rafe, who was behind Artoria. It seems that you are Saber's master. I'm afraid that her original master has already been killed by you. Rafe laughed when he heard Wu Ming's words. As expected of you. I knew it. You can't be an ordinary person if you make me feel like I have to kill you. Rafe covered his face with one hand, and his voice came from under his palm. Then, Lev removed his hand from his face and looked at Wuming with his twisted eyes. You're right. I've already taken back Saber's master. Recycling? Wuming was a little puzzled, but he did not show it on his face. Lev did not know what Wuming was thinking, nor did he want to know. Instead, he pointed at Artoria. Instantly, Artoria's heart began to glow. A cup could be vaguely seen in her heart. That is, the Holy Grail. Wuming was shocked. There was indeed the Holy Grail in Artoria's heart. Wuming could tell that the Grail in Artoria's heart was complete, which meant that the Grail in the Winterwood Cavern had been inserted into Artoria's heart by Leviticus. Wuming hurriedly asked Kalas to check the Holy Grail in the Yuanzhong Mountain Cavern. Without a doubt, the Holy Grail had disappeared. Although he did not know how Lev inserted the Holy Grail into Artoria's heart, there was no doubt that the Holy Grail in Artoria's heart was indeed the Holy Grail. This also explained why Artoria had turned dark. Her heart was filled with the evils of the world, so there was no need to mention her entire being. And no wonder Artoria had almost unlimited magic power. It turned out that the Holy Grail was supporting her. And from Lev's words, it seemed that Artoria's master was the Holy Grail. Wuming thought of Mayu, Ilya, and Blackie, which undoubtedly annoyed Wuming. Yes, I gave the Holy Grail to Saber as a trade. Saber will listen to me. What a perfect trade. Lev sighed like a bard. Then, Lev began to speak again. It's so sad, assassin. I was just going to stay here for a while and leave after completing the task given to me by the king. But you came in without permission. Lev looked at Wuming fiercely. If that's the case, then you can go to hell, assassin. With that said, magic power gathered in Lev's hand, and the Holy Grail in Artoria's heart began to glow. Don't even think about it. Although Wuming did not know what Lev wanted to do, he would not just stand by and watch. However, Saber, release your noble phantasm. Sure enough, Lev was also a smart person. He directly ordered Artoria to release her noble phantasm. Although Wuming did not know whether Artoria was forced to obey Lev's order or not, he was sure that Artoria listened to Lev and began to condense her noble phantasm. Excalibur, Excalibur! Artoria raised the holy sword high, and countless magic power flowed from the fantasy breed's heart into the holy sword. The black light expanded greatly, and then Artoria slashed at Wuming. Wuming looked at the black light in front of him, and a sentence popped up in his heart. Does this count as being chopped? Dong! A loud noise came from inside Yuzhong Mountain, and a black light broke out from inside Yuzhong Mountain. The black light was enough to cause a disturbance in Winterwood City, but now it did not cause any disturbance. In the midst of the ruins, Wu Ming struggled to reach out a hand that was wearing a black sleeve. Crash! As the owner of the hand pushed away the rubble, there was a faint sound. Wu Ming's figure squeezed out of the rubble in a sorry state, and he shook his head. Ah, it hurts. I almost went back to my roots. Wu Ming sat on the rubble in a sorry state, and he held his head in pain. Master, if you did not activate the inherent barrier at the critical moment with your current attributes, I'm afraid you would have returned to your original body, Kalas, who was on Wuming's head, said. Although Wuming's body was quite broken, the top hat had always been clean. Well, well. After all, who knew that Artoria could release her noble phantasm in an instant? Wuming laughed. That was right. Logically speaking, the light cannon noble phantasm needed a short time to charge, and without charging, the power of the light cannon noble phantasm was not enough to be compared with a noble phantasm. As for Artoria's instantaneous noble phantasm, it should be a convenience given to her by the great Holy Grail. Fortunately, Jack's noble phantasm is useful, or else I would be dead. The moment Artoria released her noble phantasm, Wuming activated the inherent barrier, Dark Mist. Although he succeeded in pulling himself into the inherent barrier, he was still sent flying by Artoria. Therefore, even though Wu Ming looked rather wretched, his foundation was not damaged much. After using magic to repair his body, Wu Ming began to pay attention to his surroundings. Looking at the burning streets around him, Wu Ming frowned. I remember that I was sent flying in the direction of Winterwood City, and the burning here does not seem to be caused by me falling. Wu Ming looked at the burning Dongmu City, and felt a sense of uneasiness as he felt the extremely turbid aura. Then, Wu Ming jumped onto a tall building that was almost completely burned. Looking around, the entire Winterwood City had turned into a sea of fire. Chapter 335. Bang! Wu Ming casually sent a skeleton soldier that emerged from the shadows of the building flying. He continued to investigate the surrounding situation. So far, there are no ordinary people in the entire Winterwood City. Did they disappear into thin air? Or were they taken away? Although there were traces of blood and corpses, Wu Ming checked them and found that they were magicians, not ordinary people. Wu Ming stopped and did not continue to walk. Everywhere is full of the smell of the black root mud, as if it has been soaked in it. Wu Ming said in annoyance. No matter what, let's go home and Gil first. Wu Ming was worried about Gil. After all, the city was now empty, only some skeleton soldiers and ghosts. Maybe the other 6 servants besides Wu Ming also disappeared. Therefore, Winterwood City was full of contaminated magic. Wu Ming could not detect the changes in the magic of Winterwood City. That is to say, if there was a battle, Wu Ming could only hear it through his eyes and ears. Just like now. What the hell is going on here? A girl's cry for help came. There are still people alive? Wu Ming's eyes lit up. Let's go and see. With that, Wu Ming disappeared. On the other side, a white-haired girl was running angrily, and behind her was a group of skeleton soldiers. That's right, a group. This made Wu Ming, who came here, could not help but blink. Is this guy's luck? That's right, although there were a lot of skeleton soldiers, Wu Ming basically encountered the scattered skeleton soldiers in the shadows of some tall buildings. Did the skeleton soldiers know how to hunt the weak together? Thinking like this, Wu Ming walked toward the girl, and his hands did not stop moving. The girl did not seem to notice the arrival of Wu Ming, she was an assassin, and continued to run. However, as often happens in melodramatic plots, the girl tripped. Damn it, don't underestimate me, I'm the master of animus. As if going crazy, the girl raised her hands. Of course, she was not surrendering, but she was going to use magic to attack. Gander! The white-haired girl raised one of her hands and extended her index finger. She then placed her other hand on the hand that had extended her index finger, and a magic array appeared in front of her index finger. A yellow magic bullet shot from the magic circle and hit a skeleton soldier, and the skeleton soldier disappeared in an instant. Is it a Nordic curse magic? Wu Ming said calmly. This kind of magic was originally a curse that could reduce people's physical ability. If it was serious, it could even kill people, but if there was enough magic power, it could also turn it into a magic bullet. This girl seemed to be a first-class magician. However, for the skeleton soldiers, it was not enough to make them feel the danger. The rest of the skeleton soldiers rushed toward the white-haired girl. Don't underestimate me. The girl continued to shoot Gander, but it could only kill a few skeleton soldiers. At this time, the girl found that there was a skeleton soldier on the electric pole behind her. The girl turned her head and looked at the demonic skeleton. Gander! The girl panicked and shot magic bullets at the skeleton soldier, but because of the panic, the magic bullets fired by the girl were a little off target, and the skeleton soldier dodged them easily. Facing the skeleton soldiers that fell from the sky, the girl was completely panicked. The girl held her head in fear and closed her eyes in despair. Someone save me! Lev! Klala. Accompanied by the sound of something falling to the ground, the girl found that the expected attack did not come, and even the sound of the skeleton soldiers in front of her disappeared. Huh! The girl slowly opened her eyes and looked at the skeleton soldier behind her. She saw that the skeleton soldier that had just attacked the girl had been divided into 13 pieces like a work of art and scattered on the ground. Then, the girl looked at the skeleton soldiers in front of her. All of them were still. A young man wearing a black trench coat, a black top hat, and his hands in his pockets slowly walked out of the skeleton soldiers. Klala! All the skeleton soldiers turned into pieces and scattered on the ground, making a sound. The young girl was startled, and her body shrank back. The young man took off his top hat and made a noble salute to the girl. "Although I'm sorry, I'm not the Lev you want, but I can still save you, lady." The girl looked at the young man in front of her blankly and did not speak. On the other side, Cuchulain and a rather naked man were fighting. The man wielded a spiral sword and attacked Cuchulain, who was holding a magic staff, repeatedly. "What's wrong, Cuchulain? Can't you fight after becoming a caster?" The man continued to attack Cuchulain with a smile on his face. "Damn it! Since you're mocking me, then take this, Fergus." Cuchulain smiled bitterly, then pointed his staff at the man named Fergus. The Lune rune appeared under the man's feet, and then there was a big explosion. Boom! Cuchulain took advantage of the impact of the big explosion to open up the distance and stood firmly in the distance. Whoosh! Fergus waved the spiral sword in his hand, and the smoke caused by the big explosion dissipated. Then he put the spiral sword on his shoulder. "You're really worthy of being called a Lune rune while fighting. You've become a caster, your brain is also good." Fergus continued to smile and looked at Cuchulain. "Well, I'm also a caster. And where did you come from?" "There are only 7 casters in the Holy Grail War, Fergus Mark Roy." Cuchulain looked serious. Since Cuchulain and the other 7 casters retreated, the next night, Cuchulain's spirit body stayed in the Winterwood Hotel. Suddenly, he could not sense his master. Cuchulain quickly looked for his master, but there was no one in the Winterwood Hotel. Outside the hotel, Cuchulain found that the whole Winterwood city had turned into a sea of fire, and he himself, even without his master, felt the lack of magic power. There was no doubt that the great Holy Grail had provided him with magic power. Then, Fergus came to the door. "I don't remember there being 2 sabers in the Holy Grail War. Where's the Night King?" Cuchulain looked at Fergus seriously. "Well, I'm not very clear here. I only know that my master used the Holy Grail to resummon 7 casters and let us kill all the survivors in the city, including the servants." Fergus shrugged and said indifferently, "However, it seems that there are not many living people in this city. I sensed the aura of a servant, so I came here. I didn't expect it to be you, Cuchulain." Cuchulain was shocked by Fergus' words. Not to mention other things, his master had resummoned 7 casters, which meant that there were now 14 casters in Winterwood City. Chapter 336. That is to say, now it's a battle royale between 14 servants. No, it should be 7 servants versus 7 servants. Cuchulain laughed maniacally. "Well, you're not wrong to say that, but I think it's more like the 7 servants on my side are killing the rest of the servants," Fergus said arrogantly with a smile on his face. "Since you're going to leave, I'll tell you, Cuchulain," Fergus said, raising the spiral sword in his hand. "Your saber belonged to us from the start, and your berserker was too noisy, so we surrounded him and killed him. But to be honest, he's quite capable." Fergus still had a smile on his face. Cuchulain felt a sense of crisis in his heart, and he quickly began to draw the Lune rune. "If you can resurrect 11 times, I have nothing to say, but you will still be killed by us." The spiral sword began to emit a strange light. Cuchulain, who was familiar with Fergus, knew that it was the precursor of Fergus's noble phantasm. "Goodbye, my adopted son and friend, Cuchulain." After that, Fergus waved the shining spiral sword in his hand. Caladbolg! With the release of the noble phantasm, a rainbow-like brilliance covered Cuchulain. Boom! The huge impact brought smoke and dust that covered the sky. So, who's next? Fergus said, carrying the released spiral sword and leaving the Winterwood Hotel. When the smoke and dust dissipated, several high-rise buildings, including the Winterwood Hotel, turned into ruins, as if witnessing the end of the hero, Cuchulainn, and as if symbolizing the bravery of the hero, Fergus, lying there quietly. On the other side, Wooming and the white-haired girl walked side by side on the burning abandoned road. The collapse of the Winterwood Hotel and the series of explosions naturally attracted the attention of Wooming and the white-haired girl. Wooming frowned and looked in that direction. Cuchulainn, is that you? What happened over there? Assassin, do you know something? The white-haired girl said rather angrily. Maybe it was a fight between servants. Who knows? Wooming shrugged and did not say anything. The white-haired girl resisted the urge to curse and touched the necklace around her neck. She didn't say anything and instead smiled happily. It's time to go, Olga. There's still a long way to go to our destination, Wooming said, walking ahead. Humph, I got it. Also, I'm your master. Can't you just listen to me for once? The girl named Olga didn't say anything in the end. She obediently followed Wooming and complained. Yes, a master who doesn't have the ability to master. You, assassin. Wooming could not help but smile. After Wooming saved the girl, he generously admitted his identity as the masterless assassin. The girl also told him her name, Olga Marie Animusfia. It sounded like a noble name. Wooming vaguely remembered this surname when he went to the clock tower. In that case, let's work together. Then, he made a suggestion. Wooming meant to let the girl named Olga Marie be his temporary master. Of course, this didn't mean that Wooming couldn't do without a master, because Wooming was directly summoned by the Great Holy Grail. No, it should be said that Wooming's main body was summoned by the Great Holy Grail. In fact, it was Wooming's main body that was summoned by the Great Holy Grail. Of course, on the other hand, Wooming was not interested in Olga Marie or anything like that. It was because Olga Marie's previous words made Wooming quite interested. Who can save me, Rafe? At that time, Olga Marie did shout that. And Wooming had seen the owner of this name not long ago, well, and he was tricked. Wooming intuitively felt that Olga Marie and Rafe must be related, but Olga Marie didn't look like a big villain. Therefore, Wooming was very curious about where Rafe, Olga Marie, and the others came from. There was no doubt that Rafe was not from this world, and Olga Marie was full of puzzles. Wooming was a magician who explored the whole Winterwood city. At that time, there was no Olga Marie, and no one entered Winterwood City these days. And the most important thing was that Olga Marie was dead. Yes, Wooming could perceive that Olga Marie was a ghost existence, similar to the existence of a servant. But it seemed that Olga Marie didn't know that she was dead, and still thought that she was a human, still alive. For various reasons, Wooming proposed to establish a contract with Olga Marie. I refuse. Of course, Olga Marie with a sad and angry face refused Wooming. Wooming certainly knew why Olga Marie refused, as before Wooming and Olga Marie joked that there was no master talent. Olga Marie was a first-class magician, but he didn't know why Olga Marie didn't have a master talent, not even a little bit. First-class magicians didn't have a master talent, which was undoubtedly interesting. However, who was Wooming? For this kind of situation, Wooming prepared a tool very early. Wooming took out a necklace from the black ripples. This was a necklace that Wooming made according to the technology of the Yuctamyrenia family. When Wooming threw the necklace to Olga Marie and explained the situation, Olga Marie was in a daze for a while, and then happily put on the necklace and established a magic channel with Wooming. The necklace had a technique that could connect the wearer and the contract servant. Although it only provided magic and there was no command curse, it could be regarded as half a master. This was the technology of the Yuctamyrenia family to let the cyborgs provide magic to the servants. The cyborgs provided magic, the master managed the servants, gave orders, fought, and used command curses, it could be said that it didn't consume the master's magic at all. In order to establish a master-servant contract with Olga Marie, Wu Ming came up with a stupid way. Only in this way Wu Ming and Olga Marie didn't completely trust each other. After all, Olga Marie was a magician, she should be cautious, which she did well. And Wu Ming simply wanted to follow Olga Marie. He wasn't in a hurry to know her information. Wu Ming had a hunch that as long as he followed Olga Marie, he would naturally know the information. Therefore, the two didn't exchange information. After that, Wu Ming proposed to go to his stronghold to see the situation. He still had an ally, servant. Because she was unfamiliar with the place, so Olga Marie agreed to follow Wu Ming to his stronghold. As a result, because the small villa that Wu Ming bought was in the east, and Wu Ming and Olga Marie's location was in the west, the two of them didn't arrive for a long time. Olga Marie said, "I'm going to die." Then they encountered the collapse of the Winterwood Hotel. Wu Ming didn't want to stir up trouble. After all, his current assassin class, Jack the Ripper, wasn't strong in frontal combat. You probably haven't seen a Jack with a 100% critical strike rate. So he could only kidnap Twinkle and let her be his damage dealer. However, trouble always fell from the sky. Laia! Chapter 337. Laia! Accompanied by an inexplicable roar, a black creature with black smoke all over its body charged out of nowhere. The opponent was undoubtedly a servant. Wu Ming could feel it at such a close distance, and it seemed to be a berserker. What's going on? Isn't Berserker Hercules? Wu Ming frowned. Later, Wu Ming observed that Berserker seemed to rush out from the collapsed Winterwood Hotel, which meant that the opponent was previously under the hotel. The opponent's whole body was black, and he could tell that it was an African. Wu Ming thought so. However, it was lucky. Laia! The black mass roared and rushed toward Wu Ming. That's right, it rushed toward Wu Ming, ignoring Olga Marie. Wu Ming could feel that the opponent was targeting him. Olga, hide, it's a servant, Wu Ming said seriously to Olga Marie behind him. Olga Marie quickly found a ruin to hide. Berserker picked up a telephone pole from the side of the road, jumped up and slammed it toward Wu Ming. Boom! The ground was directly smashed, and large pieces of stone flew up. Woo-woo! Olga Marie covered her head and hid behind the ruins, whimpering. Really, what the hell did you do, assassin? Wu Ming fell behind Berserker, so the attack naturally didn't hit Wu Ming. It's not my fault, this guy came to me. Wu Ming shrugged. Laia! Berserker roared and once again raised the blackened telephone pole and smashed it toward Wu Ming. Boom! The ground was smashed again. This guy's agility is at least A rank. Wu Ming frowned. Wu Ming almost couldn't dodge the attack. But I'm an assassin. If you expect an assassin to fight a berserker, perhaps only the ancestor of the assassin, the legendary First Hassan, could do that. If that's the case... Wu Ming narrowed his eyes. Laia! Berserker madly rushed toward Wu Ming. With Berserker's current speed, Wu Ming was in danger. The mist, dark mist city. Along with Wu Ming's noble phantasm, countless smoke exploded and engulfed Berserker, forcing Berserker was forced to stop. The smoke enveloped an area of 100 meters with Wu Ming as the center. Then, the smoke disappeared, revealing Wu Ming's figure and Berserker's disappearance. Olga Marie put out her head when there was no more noise. Eh? Did you kill that Berserker? Olga Marie was in disbelief. The smoke also covered her, so Olga Marie couldn't see anything and couldn't hear anything clearly, so she didn't know what happened. Of course not, I just trapped that Berserker in an enchantment. Let's go, he'll come out soon. That's right, Jack the Ripper's enchantment, the mist. It was the spirit storm that recreated London in the 19th century. It was also the reason why Jack the Ripper could spread fog and use fog. Enchantment. Enchantment? Olga Marie was obviously shocked. After all, for a magician, an enchantment was the highest level of magic. Don't be so surprised. My enchantment is cursed, it's not a good thing. Wuming shook his head, then took the lead and began to move toward the stronghold. After that, Olga Marie didn't ask any more questions. After all, Olga Marie was just a fake master who provided magic, so she couldn't see the attributes of the servant. Well, my situation is a bit complicated, I can't explain it in a short time. You can call me Jack or Assassin, after all, we're just partners. Wuming said at that time. Jack. Assassin. Olga Marie thought carefully. Hey! If you don't follow me, I'm leaving. Wait a minute. After walking for a while, Olga Marie really couldn't walk anymore, so Wuming took Olga Marie to a store to settle down. Although most of the buildings were destroyed and burned, there were still some buildings that weren't completely destroyed. Like this small store, there were some edible food in it. Here. Wuming said, throwing a bread to Olga Marie. This is. Olga Marie looked at the old goods, slightly nostalgic. It's still in the packaging, it's still edible. Wuming continued to organize the edible food, one by one, putting it into the black ripple. Olga Marie ate in small bites, looking at Wuming's black ripple. Is this an independent space? Olga Marie asked. Yes, because I cheated a little, I let the assassin rank have the noble phantoms of other ranks. Wuming smiled a little awkwardly. Wait, you can cheat? Olga Marie heard that for the first time, she couldn't stay calm. Didn't I say, after all, I'm special? Wuming just said to Olga Marie's surprise. Then, after organizing the edible food, Wuming walked to the door. I'll go out and check the situation, you stay here and don't run around. Wuming said. What? You make it sound like I like to run around. Olga Marie retorted Wuming, but Wuming just pretended not to hear. I also need to clear my mind, you should go. Olga Marie said in disgust. Wuming shrugged and didn't say anything. Wu Ming released his mana, propelling himself to fly up and directly arrived at the roof of a tall building. From the height of this building, he could almost overlook the entire Winterwood City. Standing on the roof, Wuming looked at Winterwood City. He could vaguely see that there were battles in Winterwood City, and there were more than one. There weren't many battles that could cause large-scale explosions, and Wuming could vaguely sense a small battle. But, it's a bit too much. Wuming said in detail. What Wu Ming was referring to was naturally the battles in those few places. Assuming that in addition to Silent Noise and Berserker just now, there were still 7 servants, and those large-scale and small-scale battles just now were more than 3 places. It's impossible that there were a few servants who had nothing to do and attacked by themselves. Combined with the extra Berserker, plus Lev's trick on the Holy Grail before Wuming was sent flying, Wuming almost guessed it. The number of servants increased? Is it to chase me or something else? Wuming thought. At this time, Wuming sensed that several servants were coming this way. If these servants didn't change their direction, there was no doubt that they would encounter Olga Marie. The perception of servants was much stronger than humans, and Olga Marie couldn't hide under the eyes of servants. But the servants coming this way just proved Wuming's conjecture. The number of servants increased. Swish! Wuming instantly disappeared from the roof. Chapter 338. On the abandoned and burning street, 2 figures were running. One of the figures was wearing a rather revealing purple tights, and some parts of the body were covered with armor. One of the figures was holding a 2-meter-high shield with a cross on the outside, and the other hand was holding a girl. Needless to say, she was a servant. The girl had short, orange-red hair that was tied into a single ponytail. She wore a simple white top with black straps around her chest and abdomen. There was a black belt around her waist. She wore a short black skirt, black stockings, and white boot. Although it looked like work clothes from somewhere, it looked extremely beautiful on the girl. The girl with short orange hair had 3 red marks on the back of her right hand, which formed a shield. Obviously, she was the master of the girl in purple tight. Next to the two, a girl in a cloak was carrying a scythe and holding a little girl with black hair in her arms. If Wuming was here, he would know that she was one of the 7 servants on the beach. She used a scythe as a weapon, lancer of the Tong family. Needless to say, the little girl with short black hair in her arms was the master of lancer. The 3 petal-like marks on the back of her right hand were the best proof. Matthew, are you okay? The girl with short orange hair asked with concern. She seemed to feel guilty for letting the younger generation carry her. It's okay, Senpai. I am Senpai's servant and Senpai is my master. The girl named Matthew said and smiled at her master. They're coming. Lancer, who was beside the 2 of them, finished speaking. Suddenly, a sharp arrow was shot towards them. Mashu quickly stopped and raised her shield to block the sharp heart-shaped arrows. Bang! 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 A few steel-like collision sounds came, and Matthew, who was holding the shield, was pushed back a few steps by the huge impact. Are you okay, Matthew? The orange-haired girl asked worriedly, her words vaguely hinting that she was blaming herself for not being able to help. It's okay, Senpai. Please be careful, the opponent is a very powerful servant. Although it was very difficult to resist the attack, Mashu still smiled and said to her master who was protecting her, Matthew is right. Chaldea's instrument shows that there are 2 servants comparable to gods. No, there is no doubt that they are gods near you. Be careful, Matthew, Tachika. A male voice came from a device on the wrist of the girl with short orange hair, who seemed to be called Rika. Although the voice sounded rather unreliable, cough cough, there was no doubt that he was right. Then, Matthew said to Lancer, Ms. Anna, please help us. I don't want Senpai to leave this place. Matthew and Tachika had seen Anna's ability. For many skeleton soldiers, Anna just waved her sickle and killed all the skeleton soldiers. She was much more powerful than Matthew. The girl called Anna couldn't help but look at her little master. Compared to Anna, she hoped that these people could call her Lancer. Also, if her little master didn't always call Anna sister, Matthew and others wouldn't know that she was called Anna. Sister Anna. Sakura Madu looked at Anna. But Anna was still hesitant, because the enemy this time was, What's wrong, my lovely sister, are you afraid to attack your own sister? A beautiful voice came from behind them. Everyone looked at the newcomer in panic, because they didn't notice her presence until she spoke. But it was obvious that she had been standing there for a long time. That's right, my lovely sister, are you afraid to attack your own sister? However, at this time, Matthew and others also heard a beautiful voice in front of them. Everyone looked to the front again, and a gorgeous purple-haired girl with 2 ponytails appeared in front of them. She was dressed almost exactly the same as the one behind them. The only difference between the 2 was their clothes and weapons. The girl who came from behind didn't have any weapons in her hands. She only had a gauntlet that protected the back of her hands. Moreover, it was more appropriate to call it an ornament than a gauntlet. It made her hands look more tempting. The girl's clothes were similar to a royal shawl and a low-cut princess dress with a long transparent hem that covered her beautiful legs. A few transparent scarves were wrapped around the girl's body, making her look particularly charming. The girl who came from the front held a small bow made of gold in her hand, but there were no arrows. From this, it could be seen that the heart-shaped arrows just now were shot by this girl. The girl didn't have gauntlets on her hands, but a bracelet made of beautiful strings of beads, which made her small hands even more beautiful. In terms of clothes, the girl's clothes were similar to the clothes of the Greek girl next door. It was just a short skirt that went up to the knees and there was a bow in front of the chest. Other than that, the 2 girls looked exactly the same, and even their temperament was exactly the same. They were like the goddess of love, full of charm, and couldn't help but want to surrender. Fortunately, Matthew and others were all women, and more or less resisted the 2 gods. If they were men, they would probably be lying on the ground licking the toes of the goddess. Sister. Anna couldn't help but whisper. The three people beside Anna heard what Anna said and were shocked. Sister? Matthew looked at Anna in disbelief. So, Anna, you are also a god? Tachika looked at Anna in surprise. Anna only made a soft sound and did not say anything else. How sad, my sister, you haven't told them your real name yet. The girl in the back smiled and looked at Anna with a light tone. Your master looks too young, and it seems that she can't use the ability of a master. The girl in front covered her mouth and laughed. So, what should we do now, sister? Will you die with your companions, or rise up and resist us? The two girls finished each other's words as if they were the same person. Sister. Perhaps I was summoned to this era to kill you again. Anna put Sakuramadu down, and Sakuramadu ran into Tachika's arms obediently. Then, Anna picked up the scythe from behind and stood back to back with Matthew, protecting their master behind them. Seeing the scythe pointed at her, the girl in the back smiled happily and painfully. My poor sister, she has to experience the pain of killing her family again. The girl in front was also the same. The two were happy that Anna didn't have to die, but they were sad that their sister had to bear the pain of killing her family. Since that's the case, I'll end all of you. Suddenly, a ghostly voice came out of nowhere. Mother of disintegration. Chapter 339. Maria Ripper. After the activation of the relic's true name, a thick fog engulfed everyone. The thick fog reduced everyone's visibility to less than 5 meters. Even Anna's two sisters could barely see each other. The girl behind Gadotsi and the rest sensed the danger as they were of the same rank. She quickly warned her sisters. Uriali, be careful. However, sigh. The girl named Uriali in front of Gadotsi, and the rest was a little dazed as she let out a doubtful voice. A silhouette appeared behind her. It was a black leather windbreaker, a black top hat, and black leather shoes. Everything was black except for the 2 red glows where his eyes were. It was extremely horrifying. What a pity, Gorgon's goddess. You're really unlucky, said the black silhouette. After all, I exist for women. The black silhouette revealed his face. It was Wuming. After Wuming finished speaking, Uriali's vision turned black and she fell. Sister? Anna shouted in worry. She raised her scythe and looked at Wuming with hostility. Wuming hugged the girl who fell and looked at everyone with a smile. Ignoring Anna who was looking at him with hostility, Wuming looked at the goddess behind Gadotsi and the rest. Then, there's only you, goddess Stheno. Stheno? Matthew said in surprise. He was obviously shocked by the name. Stheno frowned and immediately turned around to leave. Although she was a goddess, Stheno knew that she did not have much combat power. The reason why the 2 servants, Anna and Matthew, were forced to flee with their masters was that Matthew was too weak, and Anna did not want to fight with her 2 sisters, which led to the scene where the 4 of them were besieged by Stheno and Uriali. Moreover, when Anna picked up her scythe and was ready to fight, Stheno and Uriali were sad that their sister was going to kill her sister again. The 2 of them knew that if their younger sister were to fight, the 2 of them would not be a match at all. Moreover, in mythology, Stheno and Uriali were defined as goddesses who had no combat power at all. If they did not appear in the world as servants, Stheno and her sister Uriali would not have any combat power at all. Seeing that Stheno had escaped, Wuming did not rush to chase after her. Instead, he threw Uriali in his arms to Anna. Although Anna was somewhat hostile to Wuming, she would still choose to catch her sister's corpse, even if it was a conspiracy. Let's leave for a while, said Wuming, turning into smoke and disappearing in front of everyone. Anna, who was holding her sister's corpse, Gadotsi, Matthew, and Sakuramadu were left in a daze. Wuming chased after Stheno at a leisurely pace. It was not because he was arrogant, but because Stheno was now in Wuming's enchantment. That's right. The moment Wu Ming activated his noble phantasm, he also activated his enchantment, the mist. If Gudatsi and the others were paying attention, they would realize that the environment around them had changed. Besides, the device on Gudatsi's wrist no longer emitted any sound because the mist released by Wu Ming interfered with the mana connection. Moreover, Wu Ming had the ability to turn into mist in his enchantment and appear anywhere in an instant, so Wu Ming was not in a hurry to catch up with Stheno. Sensing the existence of the otherness in his enchantment, Wu Ming frowned. He hasn't come out yet? However, after sensing the distance between the two of them, Wu Ming did not bother about him anymore. Instead, he sensed Stheno's location. By the way, even if Stheno was an assassin and also had a level A+ aura concealment, he could not get rid of Wu Ming. The entire enchantment was filled with mist. As long as there was mist, Wu Ming could detect it. Therefore, Wu Ming had already discovered Stheno, who was hiding in the shadows of the alley ahead. After stopping, Wu Ming walked to the entrance of the alley slowly and looked at the shadows. "Do you want to play hide and seek, great goddess?" Wu Ming smiled as he walked into the alley. When he got close to Stheno, a charming voice was suddenly heard. "Smile of the goddess." Following the activation of the noble phantasm, Wu Ming stood there motionlessly as if he was frozen. Then, Stheno's figure appeared. "I thought you were a powerful hero, but I didn't expect you to be the same as the others." "A man is a man indeed," Stheno said slowly as if he had already won. Walking to Wu Ming, who was standing there in a daze, Stheno raised his head and looked at Wu Ming. "What beautiful eyes, what a handsome face." "What a pity," Stheno said as if she was intoxicated. None of the men who had been affected by her charm could survive. "To be able to attack us sisters, I thought you were really a man who wasn't tempted by beauty." Stheno smiled, then raised his hand and caressed Wu Ming's cheek. Suddenly, when Stheno touched Wu Ming's face, he seemed to have seen something rather shocking. Shock was written all over his face. Slap! Suddenly, a hand grabbed Stheno's arm. Then, a rather frivolous voice was heard. "It's not good to casually invade other people's privacy, great goddess." "What?" Stheno exclaimed in surprise. Looking at the man who grabbed his wrist without any trace of being affected by the charm, Stheno smiled bitterly. "I see. Was that all a disguise? What a cunning man." Wu Ming only maintained his smile and didn't explain anything. As for the appearance of being affected by the charm just now, that was an act by Wu Ming. As someone who had seen through Stheno and Euryale's true names, Wu Ming naturally wouldn't be so rash as to underestimate Stheno. Even if Wu Ming could take down Euryale without any difficulty, Wu Ming wouldn't think that Stheno was easy to deal with. After all, no matter how weak and useless the other party was, she was still a goddess. For example, just now, Stheno had only touched Wu Ming's cheek and seen some information about Wu Ming. In terms of skills, it should be similar to seeing through true names. As an existence on the same level as them, or even a higher level existence, Wu Ming said that there was no need to underestimate any god. Gods never lack trump cards. Well, of course, if the difference in strength was too great, he could still underestimate them. Cough cough. In short, because Wu Ming realized that the other party was a charming goddess, he originally wanted to use a world-class item to resist Wu Ming, but after thinking about it, he decided against it. After all, his hypostasis was very high, and he had proven before that he was immune to almost all mind control without a world-class item. Therefore, Wu Ming pretended to be charmed and grabbed Stheno when she approached Wu Ming. As for whether Stheno, who was caught by Wu Ming, would escape or not, Wu Ming already had a plan. Chapter 340. Wu Ming grabbed Stheno's hand, and a silver chain wrapped around it. Wu Ming had plenty of pirated Enkidu in his dimension artifact. Cough cough. Anyway, Stheno couldn't run away. Moreover, after Stheno saw what happened to Wu Ming, he gave up on the idea of running away. Don't worry, sly man. I have no intention of running away, even if you did something terrible to my sister. With a smile on his face, Stheno calmly said something rather strange. Although I know you're saying that I didn't kill you, O'Reilly, please don't be so strange. Forget it. Wuming shrugged nonchalantly and let go of Stheno's hand. However, the Enkidu that was connected to Stheno's hand, because of Wuming, didn't unlock when Wuming let go of Stheno's hand. What? You still don't trust me? Stheno raised the Enkidu on his arm and said unhappily. I'm a goddess. A goddess won't lie to a hero who has captured her. Stheno narrowed his eyes and smiled at Wuming as if he was looking at a delightful toy. Forget about being a hero. I'm not interested in being a hero. I'm just an assassin, at least for now. Wuming shrugged. Wuming's last sentence was to tell Stheno not to expose his identity. He just wanted to be a different kind of assassin. Oh, since the great hero says so, I'll just listen to you. Stheno smiled at Wuming. Let's go. Your O'Reilly should be awake by now, right? Wuming grabbed Stheno's hand and started walking towards where they came from. As expected of a brave warrior, you actually dared to hold the hand of a goddess. However, since you didn't do anything to you, O'Reilly, I will forgive your rudeness. Stheno raised his neck like a proud princess. I feel like it's better to get rid of you now. On the way, Wuming began to ask Stheno for information or to verify his speculation. After Wuming told Stheno about his speculation that Lev had resummoned 7 servants, Stheno nodded. As expected of you. That's right. The man in the green hat summoned 7 new servants, including me and you, O'Reilly. Stheno walked elegantly as if Wuming didn't take the initiative to hold her hand, but she took the initiative to hold Stheno's hand. Then, he began to introduce their lineup. I'm an assassin, O'Reilly is an archer, and Saber is a muscleman. I can tell he's a lecherous guy. His eyes lit up when he saw O'Reilly and me, and he even tried to flirt with us. Stheno frowned. He was rather displeased. Stheno knew how to talk up, tried sup, knew how to flirt with. Castor looks like a mature old man. He doesn't talk much. Ryder is a red-haired, muscular man. He seems to be a king, and he has some connection with Zeus. He's quite annoying. And the way Castor looks at Ryder is a bit weird. He's full of passion. Stheno smiled mischievously. Wuming ignored her and continued to listen to Stheno's introduction. Stheno looked at Wuming, who didn't respond. He was not surprised and continued to talk. Berserker was a guy covered in black. I couldn't see his face clearly. However, this guy was always by the other Saber's side. You don't know how excited Berserker was at that time. It looked like he wanted to kill Saber. Wuming thought that the Berserker mentioned by Stheno should be the Black Berserker they met before, and the other Saber mentioned by Stheno should be Artoria. Combined with what Stheno said, Wuming now knew why Berserker came straight to him. I'm afraid that Berserker is a Knight of the Round Table, Wuming thought. Although Wuming didn't think that a Knight of the Round Table could become a Berserker, there were exceptions to everything. Like Mordred, with her obsession with Artoria, she was likely to become a Berserker. In the last Holy Grail War, although Mordred appeared as a Saber, her fighting style was as violent as a Berserker. But the Berserker who attacked Wuming didn't think it was Mordred. Why was Wuming so sure? It felt wrong. Well, that's right, the Berserker didn't give Wuming the same feeling as Mordred at all. Wuming was very confident in his intuition and didn't accept any rebuttal. Ahem, after all, even if Mordred became a Berserker, she wouldn't have an obsession with Wuming. If it was really Mordred, then Artoria would be very busy right now, and the Berserker wouldn't attack Wuming at all. What about Lancer? Wuming shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He asked Stheno. This is also why I put Lancer at the end. Stheno's eyes began to look serious. You must be careful. Lancer is a god. If you really want to call him a demigod, he should have the ability to attack gods. He gave me a very dangerous feeling. Stheno recalled the golden figure he had seen before. It shone like the sun. The other party had a special attack against gods, and with the light of the sun, it was too bad for Stheno, who was a snake. Like the sun, wearing golden armor, holding a long spear. Wuming felt that this person was more familiar the more he thought about it. I hope it's not him, Wuming said softly. If it was really him, Gilgamesh might be in danger. What are you mumbling about? Stheno rolled her eyes at Wuming. Nothing, Wuming said casually. Humph. Stheno saw that Wuming was perfunctory and didn't ask any more. After a few minutes, Wuming began to complain. I was wondering why you ran so far. Wuming looked at Stheno with disdain. They had been walking for a while, and they still hadn't reached where Matthew and the others were. After all, London wasn't small. Ahahaha, Wuming could transform into smoke and move quickly, but Stheno couldn't. If it weren't for you chasing me, I wouldn't have run so far. Stheno looked at Wuming with disdain. So it's my fault. Wuming was helpless. Then unlock this for me so I can keep up with your speed. Stheno raised her hand, and the silver chain on it glowed faintly. This was the symbol of the Enkidu, which was sealing Stheno's power. I have other reasons for not unlocking it for you. At this time, Wuming was about to explain, but his expression suddenly changed. That guy went over. That guy? Is there anything else in your enchantment? Stheno looked at Wuming in confusion. However, the moment Stheno finished asking, Wuming didn't answer. He picked Stheno up and started sprinting. What are you doing? You gave me a fright. There's no time to explain, we'll talk later. Just like that, Wuming carried Stheno in a princess carry and sprinted in the direction of Gadotsi and the others. Chapter 341. When Wuming went after Stheno, there were only 4 people left: Gadotsi, Matthew, Anna, and the unconscious Euryale. Gadotsi looked at the direction where Wuming went, then she looked at Matthew. Matthew, is that man also a servant? He's so powerful. Gadotsi was a little excited, and her eyes were shining. Yes, senpai, the man who went after the enemy is a servant, but strangely, I haven't found his aura. His rank may be assassin. After Matthew explained to Gadotsi about Wuming, he wanted to contact their support personnel, but, Doctor? Are you there? No matter how Matthew called the device on Gadotsi's hand, no one responded. What's going on? Just when Matthew was puzzled, Gadotsi's panicked voice came. Matthew, look, the environment around us has changed. Hearing Gadotsi's surprised and slightly panicked voice, Matthew also looked around. The surrounding buildings had become European-style buildings, which were completely different from the modern buildings in Winterwood City. Similarly, there was no one around and there was no trace of life. Because of the fog brought by Wuming, Matthew and Gadotsi didn't notice the change in the surrounding environment at first. If it weren't for Gadotsi's curiosity about the fog, it would have taken Matthew a while to notice the change in the surrounding environment. Matthew walked to a nearby corner and touched the wall. Senpai, this should be a 19th century building. Matthew turned around and looked at Gadotsi. Hey Matthew, do you know this place? Gadotsi was a little surprised. Yes, I've seen it before. Matthew smiled and nodded. Matthew is really knowledgeable. Gadotsi praised Matthew, which made Matthew blush a little. This fog contains extremely powerful toxins. Ordinary people may die if they stay here for a long time. At this time, Anna suddenly said. Gadotsi and Matthew looked at Anna, who had been holding her sister before. At this time, Anna had already hugged Sakura Madu in her arms and protected Sakura Madu with her cloak. What? Senpai, how do you feel now? Matthew looked at Gadotsi with a little panic. Although it's not that I don't trust Anna, I really don't feel uncomfortable. Gadotsi touched her body and shook her head. Really, senpai? Matthew still didn't believe it and looked at Gadotsi with concern. Really, really, Matthew, don't be so nervous. Gudazzi smiled and waved her hand to signal Matthew to calm down. That, Anna sis, actually, I don't feel any discomfort. It's better to say that the air in the fog is very fresh. At this time, Sakura Madu, who was protected in Anna's arms, also spoke. Anna was silent at this time, thinking. Previously, Anna was silent for a while because of her sister's corpse and didn't take care of Sakura Madu, but when she found that her sister was not dead, she felt relieved. At the same time, Anna also discovered the toxins contained in the fog. After that, she quickly protected Sakura Madu. In other words, Sakura Madu was not protected by Anna for a short period of time. Anna and Matthew could stay in the fog for a long time without being hurt, but their masters were also fine. Gudazzi was not affected at all, and Sakura Madu said that the air was very fresh. It's better to be cautious. After all, this is likely to be assassin's enchantment. Anna was silent for a moment, but she still didn't release Sakura Madu from her cloak. However, after Anna said the word enchantment, Matthew was shocked. Enchantment? After all, Matthew already knew that Anna was also a goddess, so Matthew felt that Anna's words were very credible. Looking at the somewhat surprised Matthew, Gudazzi, who didn't know what an enchantment was puzzled. Matthew, what is that? Enchantment? Gudazzi asked. Senpai, enchantment is a magic that can instantiate one's own scenery. You can think of it as an independent small world. Matthew knew that his master was not a magician, so he explained it in the simplest terms. Independent small world. Is it that powerful? Gudazzi was also surprised. Well, it's called enchantment. It's called the magic closest to magic. It can be said to be the highest level magic. Matthew nodded. The highest level magic? For Gudazzi, she didn't understand the meaning of magic, but the term highest level magic was very useful for Gudazzi. After all, it was the highest level magic. And among magicians, magicians with enchantment are quite rare. It seems that assassin is not an ordinary person. Matthew looked at the direction where Wuming left. The servant over there is right. She is indeed not an ordinary person. A seductive voice sounded, and it was a voice that everyone was familiar with. What's that sound? Gudazzi looked in the direction of Uriali, who was unconscious. As expected, the unconscious Uriali had woken up. She was sitting on the ground in an elegant posture, looking like a young lady. Huh! Didn't you say that you were killed by assassin just now? How did you come back to life? Gudazzi's face was filled with a zombie expression. After all, Gudazzi always thought that Uriali was killed by Wuming. How rude of me, unknown master. Let's not talk about how I'm a goddess. How could I die so easily? Moreover, that guy isn't a cruel person. Why would he kill me? Uriali looked at Gudazzi with disgust, which made Gudazzi feel a little embarrassed. Are you awake, sister? Anna knew that her sister was not dead, so she was not surprised to see Uriali wake up. I'm so sad, my dear sister. Can't you be more gentle with your sister? Uriali said uninterestedly. Anna didn't say anything. She didn't even look at Uriali. You won't be our enemy anymore, right? Matthew said uncertainly. Yes, of course. I've been defeated by that man, and I'm his prisoner now. I won't attack you anymore. Uriali didn't feel like a prisoner at all. She looked at Gudazzi and Matthew playfully. Besides, although Master asked us to kill all living creatures, Stheno and I have no intention of attacking you. We're only chasing you because our sister is here. Sigh. Matthew and Gudazzi were dumbfounded. Hearing this, Gudazzi and Mashu remembered that it was Anna who passed by them at the beginning, and then the two of them began to chase after them. Because of that, Matthew had no choice but to propose a collaboration with Anna. I'm sorry. Anna's expression couldn't be seen, but Matthew and Gudazzi felt that Anna's face was extremely red. Let's not talk about that first. A servant is coming, Euryale said calmly. La ia dash. Chapter 342. A roar that didn't sound like a human's roar could be heard from the front of Gadotsi and the others. This made Gadotsi, who had just escaped from danger, feel very uneasy. Matthew, who could see his master's uneasiness, raised his shield and stood in front of Gadotsi. It's okay, Senpai. I am Senpai's servant. I will protect Senpai. Looking at Matthew's smiling face, Gadotzi's fear was swept away. Thank you, Matthew. Gadotsi smiled at Matthew. It's coming, Euryale reminded. At the same time, a hostile servant appeared in front of Matthew and the others. Because of the interference of the fog, Matthew, who had just become a servant, no, a dime servant, was obviously not like Euryale and Anna. His perception of danger was also a level lower. Anna had already let go of Sakuramadu and raised her scythe at the source of the danger. Sakuramadu also ran to Gadotzi's side and was hugged by Gadotsi. After all, Sakuramadu was still a little girl, and she was very likable. Gadotsi naturally would not reject Sakuramadu, so she picked her up. Laea. As the roar approached, the owner of the roar appeared in front of Gadotsi and the others. The black fog and the full body armor made it impossible to see the person's face, but they knew that this was a berserker. Ah, it's our berserker. Euryale knew that the berserker would not distinguish between friend and foe, but she still said calmly. Although Matthew was very confused about what Euryale meant by our side, now was not the time to ask questions. Sister, can you fight with us? Anna looked at Euryale, who was sitting on the ground in an elegant posture. Of course, Mashu and Gadotsi also agreed to the idea of increasing their combat power. No, Euryale said straightforwardly. Looking at Matthew and Gadotsi, who immediately showed regret, Euryale continued. It's not that I don't want to help you, but that man is afraid that I won't be honest, so he has already set a restraint on me. With that said, Euryale raised her hand with a bracelet. Above this pair of beautiful and charming jade hands, several silver-white chains with golden light were wrapped around it. Chains, Gadotsi said, looking at the silver-white chains in confusion. She didn't notice it before. Matthew was also puzzled. Obviously, neither of them noticed it. Perhaps only Anna, who caught Euryale before, noticed it. The extraordinarily beautiful chains and the beautiful girl accompanied by her smile made her even more beautiful and seductive. It didn't feel out of place at all, which was why Matthew and Gadotsi didn't notice it. This chain has the ability to restrain the mana and divine power in my body. Also, I was injured by that man's noble artifact earlier, so I don't even have the strength to stand up now. This was also the reason why Yuri and Ellie had been sitting there without standing up. Besides, you can't defeat him alone. Hurry up and run for your lives. After all, Euryale and the Black Berserker were considered to be on the same side, and he wasn't weak at all. When Anna decided to kill Euryale and Stheno, the two of them felt that Anna would definitely be able to do it. That was because that was how myths and legends work. This was how heroic spirit legends work. The evil dragon was destined to be unable to defeat the dragon slayer, and the pure girl couldn't resist her younger sister, who killed and devoured her in order to protect her. That was the tragedy and law of the followers. Therefore, judging from the strength of Anna and Matthew, it was unlikely that they would be able to defeat this berserker. I won't leave. I won't abandon my sister and leave. I'll protect my sister this time. It was ironic that the pursuer no longer chased after them. The rebels who had made up their minds to kill the pursuer changed their mind and chose to protect the pursuer instead. Fate is often so ************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** Get used to it. Us too. Although you've been chasing after us, it was a misunderstanding. Since you're Ms. Anna's sister, we won't abandon you. Gudatsi clenched her fists and looked at Matthew. That's right. I agree with you, Senior. Matthew nodded. It had to be said that Matthew, who had just become a subservient, and Gudatsi, who had just entered the world of magicians, had a very high sense of justice. However, Euryale was helpless against Anna, Matthew, and Gudatsi's opinions. You guys are really… Euryale shook her head helplessly. Then, before Euryale finished her sentence, Anna dashed toward Berserker. Laea! Berserker bellowed at the sight of his enemy, charging toward him. He raised the blackened electric pole in his hand and charged toward Anna. Got to say, Euryale was indeed a goddess. Her analysis was spot on. Anna was indeed no match for Berserker. Bam! In just a single exchange, Anna was sent flying by Berserker. Mashu! Gudatsi saw that his ally was sent flying, so he quickly shouted at Mashu. Yes, Senior. Although the two hadn't known each other for a long time, Matthew and Gudatsi fell in love at first sight. Ahem, they cooperated very well. Matthew naturally understood what Gudatsi meant. In an instant, Matthew dashed toward Berserker with his shield. Berserker didn't know why, but after seeing Mashu, he was stunned and stood there in a daze. Bam! Boom! Berserker was accidentally knocked away by Matthew and fell to the ground with a loud thud. That's right, accidentally. Matthew, Gudatsi, Euryale, and Anna, who was sent flying by Berserker, were also stunned. It couldn't be helped. Such a powerful enemy was sent flying by Matthew's shield bash. Anna wondered how she had been sent flying just now. Matthew, you're so powerful! Gudatsi exclaimed. When they first came to this world, Gudatsi and Matthew only encountered skeletons and the like. However, because Matthew was a servant, it was easy for him to deal with skeletons. Therefore, Gudatsi felt that Matthew was very powerful at that time. Later, when Gudatsi praised Matthew, Matthew said that those skeletons were just weak soldiers. He was actually very weak, but he encountered a weaker opponent. This made Gudatsi feel a little helpless. Although it didn't mean that she hated Matthew, Gudatsi was still a little depressed when she learned the truth. However, there was one sentence that Gudatsi remembered very clearly and was very touched. I am Senior's servant, and I will always protect Senior. Matthew's sentence moved Gudatsi quite a bit. Then, the two fell in love at first sight. Ahem. Their relationship became more harmonious. But now, after seeing Matthew send Berserker, who was very powerful, Anna, flying, Gudatsi wondered if Matthew said that he was weak to make her feel less proud. Then, while everyone was still in a daze, Berserker, who was sent flying, got up again and rushed to Matthew's side. That's right. For some reason, Berserker did not attack Matthew. Instead, he attacked the others. Other than Matthew, the one who was closest to Berserker was Euryale, who could not move freely. Berserker rushed to Euryale and raised the electric pole that had been transformed into a noble artifact. Sister! Anna, who got up again, screamed in shock. Boom! Chapter 343. Boom! The Grade D electric pole relic smashed onto the ground, causing the ground to shatter. However, Euryale was nowhere to be seen on the shattered ground and under the electric pole. Euryale was not sent back to the Martyr's Palace either. Instead, gosh, I almost died, Euryale grumbled. Sister? Anna looked in the direction of the voice. At the same time, Mashu and Gudatsi also looked at him. He saw a man wearing a black windbreaker, black leather shoes, and a black top hat standing on top of a pile of rubble. The man was carrying two identical girls in his arms. They were Stheno, who had escaped, and Euryale, who had almost died under Berserker's baton. Ah! It's the mysterious assassin! Gudatsi screamed. The man was Wuming, who had rushed over with Stheno. You took so long to come back, assassin. Euryale sat in Wuming's arms, holding Wuming's neck to keep her balance. She complained to Wu Ming in a dissatisfied tone. Which family are you from? If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have saved you. One stheno is enough for me. Wu Ming said helplessly. How can you blame me for that? You're not a gentleman at all. Just like Euryale, Stheno sat in Wu Ming's other arms. She held Wu Ming's neck to keep her balance while refuting Wu Ming. Wu Ming walked toward Gadotsi with Stheno. Wu Ming noticed Berserker in the enchantment. Berserker was the Berserker who seemed to be one of the knights of the Round Table. When he suddenly encountered Berserker, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Wu Ming directly used Jack the Ripper's inherent barrier, the mist, to trap Berserker inside. Wu Ming had used the tactic of trapping the enemy in the enchantment before. Wu Ming had set up a large number of magic formations in the enchantment. After bringing Angelica and Beatrice into the enchantment, Wu Ming retreated. Wu Ming could have chosen not to enter the enchantment, but he had to say a few words to them. Although the caster of the enchantment was neither scientific nor magical, Wu Ming had such an ability. After all, Wu Ming was the root dragon. The adaptability of time and space was reflected here. The enchantment was like a flexible Rubik's cube in Wu Ming's hand. Wu Ming could arrange the enchantment in various ways. After that, Wu Ming took Olga and Marie away from there, and went to a small shop not far away. Wu Ming left some mana in the enchantment, which was enough to support Wu Ming and the others. The enchantment disappeared, and Berserker was released. After that, Wu Ming encountered Gadotsi and the others, as well as Stheno and Euryale who were chasing them. After using his noble phantasm Maria Ripper, and the enchantment noble phantasm the Dark Mist, Gadotsi, Stheno, and Euryale were transferred to the enchantment. At that time, Berserker, who was trapped in the Dark Mist, had not been released yet. When Wu Ming chased Stheno, he also checked Berserker's location and found that he was quite far away from Wu Ming, so he was relieved to play with Stheno. But after a while, Berserker seemed to have sensed a trace of aura coming from the barrier, and it began to go berserk. Wu Ming could sense that Berserker was running around in the enchantment. And just when Wu Ming and Stheno were on their way back to Gadotsi and the others, Wu Ming sensed that Berserker was approaching Gadotsi and the others. After all, the Dark Mist was about the size of London City. Although it was not small, it was not that big either. It could only be said that Berserker was very lucky to have found the location of Gadotsi and the others. As expected of Lucky Bee, after Wu Ming sensed all of this, Wu Ming hurriedly carried Stheno and rushed over at full speed. However, Wu Ming was worried that Gadotsi and the others would have an accident, so he directly used his Draconis item, which he hadn't used for a long time, and rushed over with agility beyond X. Why do you think Wu Ming did not hesitate to cheat to bring his treasure trove? It was because the treasures in the treasure trove were really helpful to Wu Ming. Especially Wu Ming, who was an assassin at the moment. The treasures were really helpful. After Wu Ming used an item to speed up his journey, the scene where Wu Ming saved Euryale, who was about to die under the telephone pole, appeared. The reason why Wu Ming did not directly remove the enchantment was that Berserker was not far from them, and he might be attacked by other servants. After all, Wu Ming had verified that Winterwood City had indeed summoned the 7 servants. If he directly removed the enchantment, Berserker would definitely find them. In addition, Berserker did not find Gadotsi and the others in the enchantment, so Wu Ming wanted to meet with Gadotsi and the others to ask something in the enchantment. Obviously, the orange-haired girl and the shield lady were not people of this world. After crossing through time and space, their space-time aura was a bit serious. The reason why Olga Marie did not have the space-time aura was because she was dead. She was just like a servant. She was dead. She was a mass of magic power. She was a spirit. But even so, Wu Ming still suspected that Olga Marie had something to do with Gadotsi and the others. Stheno only complained because Wu Ming's super speed scared the goddess. After all, Wu Ming's agility was beyond EX, and he was comparable to Wu Ming's phoenix incarnation. However, the item that increased speed was not something that everyone could use. If Olga Marie used it, she would explode in an instant. After all, if her physical fitness was not up to par, she naturally couldn't use it. Take Wu Ming's avatar for example. In the world of the Godslayers, Wu Ming's original body had descended. Even though he was still in his infancy state, the origin Draconis physical body that had undergone some minor baptisms had become extremely powerful. Wu Ming's incarnation had limitations because Wu Ming still had room to grow. It was estimated that when Wu Ming was fully grown, Wu Ming could use multiple incarnations at will, and their power would also be greatly improved. But if Wu Ming's incarnation was used by his incarnation, the limitations would be quite big. After all, if the strength of the incarnation was not enough, it would be torn apart in an instant. As for Assassin, the reason why Silent Wonder didn't cheat and let the 12 clones follow him was because Silent Wonder couldn't use any of his clones. Even if he could use them, the power was very small. If Wu Ming used them by force, he would die. Therefore, it was really useful to bring Draconis, a treasure trove that contained a large number of very useful treasures. At that moment, Berserker, who lost his target, began to roar furiously. Laea! Gudatsi and the others realized that the enemy had not been eliminated yet. Chapter 344. Gudatsi, Matthew, and Anna tensed up when they heard Berserker's roar. Wu Ming, Stheno, and Euryale, who were in his arms, weren't nervous at all. Stheno and Euryale were goddesses, so they didn't feel anything from a mere berserker. Even when Euryale almost died under Berserker's stick, she didn't react at all. She was still chatting happily with Wu Ming and Stheno. Wu Ming, on the other hand, wasn't afraid at all. Wu Ming had been through a lot, so a mere berserker wasn't enough to scare him. Wu Ming wasn't scared at all. Besides, Wu Ming only used the dark mist to trap Berserker because Olga Marie was there. There were many ways to deal with Berserker, but it would be a waste of time to fight Berserker. After all, this city was filled with danger. Olga Marie might already be in danger outside. Berserker was Wu Ming's half-master, after all. It was better to deal with him as soon as possible. Just as Berserker was about to charge at Wu Ming and the others, especially Wu Ming, Berserker realized that his movements were sluggish as if he had fallen into a bottomless swamp. Berserker is indeed Berserker. You didn't even notice the trap I set under your feet? Wu Ming shook his head in boredom. At that moment, a few stones around Berserker lit up. Simple and mysterious runes could be seen on the stones. That's right, they were Lune runes. These stones were rune stones. Just like Rin Enbin and Luvia's gem magic, these rune stones had the same effect. Gem magic was to store spells and magic power in gems in advance, and then use them directly when needed. Magicians needed spells and magic power to cast magic, but because the spells and magic power needed to be used were all stored in gems, the use of gem magic was only to release the gems that stored the spells and magic power. Releasing the gems only required a small amount of mana, so gem magic was very practical. However, since the gems used for gem magic were single-use, it was mostly used by nobles. Of course, Rin Enbin didn't look like a noble anymore, but she was telling the truth when she said that she was down and out. As for the rune, it was engraved on the stone in advance. When it was used, it only needed to be released. However, the rune was extremely powerful. Although it wasn't in terms of attack, it was extremely powerful in other aspects. Therefore, the stone made of the rune could be said to be extremely precious. At this moment, the stones that trapped Berserker were engraved with large amounts of Lune runes that had the effect of slowing and suppressing. Just one stone was enough to cause an obvious effect. At this moment, dozens of Lune runes lit up around Berserker. These dozens of rune stones formed an intricate magic formation with Berserker in the center. This magic formation was made of dozens of binding Lune runes. It wasn't easy to bind Berserker, who had an A-rank endurance. Of course, if Berserker could move, he would be able to escape from the magic formation. However, Berserker was like a fish on the chopping block. It was impossible for him to escape. What? If one were to ask Wuming where the Lune runes engraved on the rune stones came from, Wuming would say that when he first learned the Lune magic, he would experiment with stones by the roadside. Over time, countless rune stones accumulated. Therefore, Wuming chose a portion of the useful rune stones and stored them in his Lune rune space. Of course, Wuming hadn't completed the Lune space at that time, so it was still very small. Therefore, Wuming only stored a small portion of the rune stones and left the rest in the country of shadow. After that, Wuming would sometimes create some rune stones when he was free. After all, Wuming knew that there would be a day when he would need them. Just like now, he couldn't release the true name of the relic in his treasure vault, nor could he use the advanced magic of assassin. Now, he only needed to use a little bit of mana to recreate the Kanzaki magic. One had to know that Silent Cry's mana level was Yek. In that case, there was no shortage of mana. Laea! Although Berserker was bound, he still roared unwillingly. Facing the immobile Berserker, Wuming gently placed Stheno and Euryale on the ground, and walked towards Berserker. Wuming came before Berserker and took out 18 rune stones from the black space beside him. As expected, you're Lancelot, right? Wuming said softly. When Wuming said Lancelot's name, Berserker suddenly fell silent for a moment, but soon returned to his frenzied state. Wuming smiled with pity. The hero who was known as the Knight of the Lake and the Flower of Knights, who had achieved countless feats and received the blessings of the elves, had actually turned into a monster. What a joke. You've been chasing after me. I'm afraid you're obsessed with me. When Wuming was in Camelot, almost all the knights respected, admired, and worshipped Wuming. However, Lancelot was the only one who could be considered a fanatic. However, Lancelot wasn't loyal to Wuming. As Arthur Artoria's knight, Lancelot had always been exceptionally loyal to her, but he also worshipped Wuming fervently. Although he didn't express it, Wuming could feel it. After Wuming's departure, Lancelot's fanaticism shifted to Guinevere. When Guinevere was tricked by Morgan Le Fay to reveal his love for Wuming and was about to be executed, Lancelot didn't hesitate to save Guinevere and escape from Camelot. However, because of this, Lancelot became the second fuse that affected the fall of Britain after Wuming. Surrounding the incident between Lancelot and Guinevere, the people questioned, the nobles stirred up trouble, and Artoria's power was affected. This was a severe psychological blow to Lancelot. Then, Guinevere said, "I should be executed. It's not only a release but also a way to lighten the king's burden." After that, Lancelot sent Guinevere back. After that, Artoria successfully exiled Guinevere and saved his life. Lancelot had always been obsessed with Wuming, which was why he kept chasing after Wuming. Not only that, but turning the electric pole into a noble relic and disguising his appearance were also very similar to Lancelot's experience. Defeating the enemy with a tree branch and completing the heroic feat of hiding his identity. Wuming guessed that these two things could be upgraded to noble relic or skill. All these signs were very clear. Coupled with Wuming's probing, Wuming was now very sure that Berserker was Lancelot. "I didn't expect to meet you here, Lancelot. How sad." Wuming slowly placed the 18 rune stones around Lancelot and chatted with him. "Leia!" Lancelot screamed miserably. "I know you have a lot to say to me, but let's wait until next time. Compared to Berserker, I think Saber is more suitable for you." After placing the 18 Lune runes on the stones, Wuming turned around and left. At this moment, Lancelot seemed to have calmed down. He stiffly performed a knight's salute to Wuming. Ocht Dug Odin. A magic spell that was comparable to a city's noble phantasm was released. In an instant, a violent explosion came from behind Wuming. The flames and smoke of the explosion were more than 10 meters high, but it did not burn Wooming and the others at all. Goodbye, Lancelot. Chapter 345. The flames raged and burned the entire city of London. After Berserker left, Wooming deactivated the inherent barrier. Everyone returned to the burning city of Winterwood. Hey, can you hear me? That's great. The device here suddenly showed a large amount of magic, and I couldn't contact you guys. That scared me. Thank goodness you guys are fine. As soon as they returned to Winterwood, Godotzi's wrist glowed, and a virtual screen appeared in front of everyone. On the screen was the face of a kind and dispirited young man. He had the aura of a loser. Is this the magician who made the sound? What a loser. That's right. I thought a magician who can use a remote screen like this would be more reliable. How disgusting. Stheno and Euryale looked at the young man on the screen with disdain. What's going on? Wait, what's going on? The young man was frustrated at first, but then he realized that the two followers of the goddess in front of him were enemies. Ahahaha. Anyway, they're not enemies now. Roman, don't worry about it. Godotzi smiled awkwardly. I'll explain the situation to you later, Dr. Roman, Matthew said to the young man seriously. Is that so? Well, it's good that you guys are fine. Just now when I suddenly couldn't contact you guys, everyone was worried sick. The doctor called Roman began to spread the dispirited atmosphere as he constantly complained and complained. Yes, I know, Dr. Roman. Godotzi answered Roman helplessly. Matthew noticed that Wooming, the main person who solved the crisis, did not say anything. He was frowning as if he was thinking about something. Mr. Assassin, are you all right? Matthew asked worriedly. Godotzi, who was talking to Roman, also looked at Wooming. That's right. Mr. Assassin helped us. Please let us know if you have any problems. Godotzi smiled innocently and looked at Wooming, who was standing behind Stheno and Euryale. Wooming shook his head. I'm fine. I just want to ask you guys something. Ask us? Godotzi and Matthew looked at each other in confusion. Oh, I need to pick up my master. I'll come back later. Wooming did not wait for them to respond and turned around to leave. By the way, there shouldn't be any danger around here, but a sudden intrusion like just now. You guys should be careful. I'll be back soon. After that, Wooming disappeared. Li Xiang, Mashu, that servant is? Roman asked with a slightly dignified tone. He's the one who helped us subdue the two goddesses, Matthew explained. Also, we met a berserker in Assassin's enchantment. Assassin defeated him easily, Godotzi said excitedly. Enchantment? I guess that's why we can't contact you. Roman touched his chin and pondered. Then, do you know the real names of the berserker and the assassin who left, and the real names of the two goddesses? Roman's voice became very soft. He looked at Stheno and Euryale carefully. After all, he was a little embarrassed in front of the two goddesses. How dare you talk about the goddesses in front of them, magician who's not here? Stheno was an assassin after all, so he could naturally hear it. My real name is Stheno, and this is my sister, Euryale. Before Godotzi and the others could react, Stheno said his and Euryale's real names casually. After all, we've been defeated by that man. As goddesses, we're prepared to become his captives. Euryale explained why the two of them had told her their real names without hesitation. She also explained why they were no longer enemies. Is that so? Roman's shoulders drooped helplessly. Godotzi tried to recall the real names of Wooming and the berserker who was defeated by Wooming. I don't know Mr. Assassin's real name, but as for berserker's real name, I remember Mr. Assassin called him Lancelot. What? Without waiting for Godotzi to finish, Roman interrupted him in surprise, and even gave Godotzi a fright. Matthew came to Godotzi's side and shielded Godotzi with his body. Then, he protested to Roman, "Doctor, please keep your voice down. You're scaring the seniors." "I'm sorry, but this is shocking news." Roman put his palms together and apologized. Then, his expression turned serious. Matthew and Gadazzi were confused. "Judging from your tone, Mr. Assassin called him Lancelot, right? If that's the case, he can't be a nobody." Roman looked at them seriously. "Someone who can defeat the Knight of the Lake can't be weak, even if the Knight of the Lake has lost his mind. That assassin is very strong." "Doctor, what do you mean?" Gadazzi understood. "Although you don't know Mr. Assassin's real name, there is no doubt that he can rival the Knights of the Round Table, and even surpass them. To be honest, I really don't understand why such a person is Mr. Assassin. Although the Knights of the Round Table have berserker adaptability, I still find it hard to accept. After all, the Knights of the Round Table were noble knights. Even the rebellious knight Mordred didn't do anything that violated the knight's code. The reason why Roman was surprised that Wuming, as an assassin, could defeat berserker was because assassins were generally weak. Generally, they can only be used to collect information and assassinate their master. Let alone berserker, even caster sometimes can't defeat them, let alone rider, saber, lancer, and archer with 3 mounts. That was why caster and assassin were known as the weakest among the 7 classes. Caster was also a powerful enemy after the workshop was completed, but assassin didn't have any other advantages, so sometimes assassin was even weaker than caster. But he used assassin to defeat Stheno, who is also an assassin, and even Euryale, who is an archer. After that, he still had the strength to defeat berserker. It seems that you have encountered a powerful servant. The more Roman analyzed, the brighter Matthew and Gadazzi's eyes became. Stheno and Euryale kept smiling as they watched the 3 of them talking. They didn't interrupt. After all, they knew Wuming's identity, so they wouldn't be too surprised by some things. And according to the various phenomena just now, he can be said to be a very easy person to get along with. If his master agrees, you can cooperate with them to solve the mutation of singularity F. If he didn't have a master, I would have asked Tachika to sign a contract with him. With him, I won't worry about your safety anymore. Roman looked regretful. That's great. Matthew, I can solve this singularity soon. Gadazzi hugged Matthew happily. Although Roman meant that Matthew couldn't guarantee Gadazzi's safety, Matthew knew that Roman didn't think so much, so he didn't say anything. He just smiled and nodded to Gadazzi. Matthew! Tachika Fujimaru! Suddenly, a familiar voice came to Gadazzi and others. Chapter 346. Matthew! Tachika Fujimaru! A familiar voice came, and the 2 couldn't help but look at the source of the voice. Wuming and Olga Marie stood not far away. Wuming didn't do anything, but Olga Marie looked like she had finally found the organization. Of course, she wouldn't admit it. "Director, are you still alive?" Sure enough, Roman was a rather clumsy person. "What do you mean, Roman Aikman, are you looking forward to my death?" Obviously, Roman Aikman was his real name, and Roman was an abbreviation. Olga Marie angrily walked to the virtual screen and stared at Roman. How could that be, Director? It's great that you're okay." Roman tiredly dealt with Olga Marie, feeling rather helpless. "Director also successfully came here, that's great," Matthew said happily when he saw that Olga Marie was fine. Olga Marie was a little unnatural when she heard Matthew's words. Wuming felt that Olga Marie was a little resistant to Matthew, or more accurately, she felt guilty. Seems like there's a story. Wuming thought carefully. That's great, Director is also fine. Gadazzi also smiled happily. Ahem. Speaking of which, are you the only 2 here? Where are the others, and why are you sitting in this position, and where is Lev? Olga Marie asked, then looked at Roman on the virtual screen. Wu Ming, who was behind Olga Marie, slightly raised his eyebrows when he heard this, but quickly returned to normal. Sure enough, Lev is indeed related to this group of people, but it seems they don't know Lev's true identity. Through the behavior of this group of people, Wu Ming could naturally see their character, and it was obvious that they were not on the same side as Leviticus. Wu Ming looked at the male lead on the screen. Only this male lead was something that Wu Ming couldn't see through. The so-called couldn't see through meant that Roman was like a god and like a human, like a living person and like a dead person. If there's a chance, I still have to meet this person in person. Wu Ming always had a feeling that Roman was not the culprit behind the burning of Winterwood City, but also the person who couldn't get away from the root cause of the black mud. Because of Olga Marie's doubts, Roman didn't notice Wu Ming's gaze. Currently, except for Tachika Fujimaru, the rest of the 47 masters are trapped in the shell's body and are. Because the explosion was in the center of the control, Roman said regretfully. Wu Ming couldn't help but laugh. Fortunately, he held it back in time and didn't reveal it. If a mere explosion could kill Lev, Wu Ming would thank the heavens. Lev. But after hearing this bad news, Olga Marie looked like she couldn't accept it. Through the magical connection between Wu Ming and Olga Marie, Wu Ming could clearly sense that Olga Marie's magical power was very unstable. If he had to describe it, it would be like a human after their faith collapsed. But Olga Marie was indeed a famous magician. She quickly calmed down and began to understand the condition of their base through Roman, and began to give orders. Wu Ming wasn't interested in listening to this. He walked over to the Gorgon sisters and Anna's young master, Sakura Madu. Anna was sitting on a small rock with the sleeping Sakura Madu in her arms. Stheno and Euryale were sitting on the left of Anna and Sakura Madu. Wu Ming walked over and Stheno spoke first. You finally have time to talk to me. I thought you had forgotten about me. Stheno narrowed her eyes at Wu Ming, who was walking over. What a greedy man! Not only did he capture me, but he also captured another me, and heartlessly abandoned us. How heartless! Euryale continued Stheno's words, and also narrowed her eyes at Wu Ming. I wouldn't dare to capture the goddess. I heard that anyone who has anything to do with the gods of Greek mythology doesn't have a good ending. Wu Ming shrugged and said disinterestedly. But those are all mortals. If it's you, I don't think you'll suffer, Stheno said cheerfully. Wu Ming ignored the two of them. He walked to Anna's right and sat down. Is she asleep? Wu Ming looked at Sakura Madu and asked Anna. After all, she was his sister-in-law in another world. He should at least show some concern. Thank you for not killing my sister. Anna replied first. Then, she thanked Wu Ming softly. By now, Anna's identity had been made known to everyone. She was the youngest sister of the Gorgon sisters. She had devoured two of her sisters and turned into a monster, Medusa. Of course, the current Anna was Medusa's infant body. In other words, she hadn't killed her sisters yet. Although she had made up her mind to kill Stheno and Euryale, it was undoubtedly torture for Anna. Stheno and Euryale loved their sister. Just like how Anna would protect Euryale, Anna also loved her sister deeply. If it weren't for the curse, Medusa wouldn't have devoured her sister to protect her chastity. Even though Stheno and Euryale did it willingly, it was still a torture for Medusa. It was the pain of killing her loved ones. I didn't want to see such a curse. That's why I chose to do it. Wu Ming looked at Gadotsi and the others as he conversed with Anna. But because of that, I've been on the brink of death, Euryale suddenly interrupted. Jack the Ripper's relic, Mary Ripper, was a curse. There were 3 conditions to trigger the curse. Fog, night, and the target is a female. Back then, Wu Ming had activated the relic during the day. Although Wu Ming had released the fog, which was the dark fog, and the target, Euryale, was a female, Mary Ripper, which didn't fulfill the 3 conditions, only dealt damage. As Wu Ming had deliberately held back and Euryale's skills, and the god's core of the goddess helped to block the attack, Euryale didn't die. However, it also caused Euryale to be unable to move. After all, Euryale was indeed injured, and Silent Wonder had placed the pseudo-sky lock on her, which almost caused her to die at Lancelot's hands. Although you came in time to save me, you're the one who caused me to be in danger. Remember to take responsibility, Stheno finished for Euryale. Help me protect my beloved sister, the two of them said in unison. Chapter 347. Wu Ming raised an eyebrow at Stheno and Euryale's shameless request. You two really know how to take advantage of the situation. Why did he say that? It was because Stheno and Euryale seemed to have been connected when they came into contact with Wu Ming. They knew Wu Ming's identity. He was an extremely powerful and majestic legendary dragon from beyond this world, the Dragon of Origin. The two of them knew about the dangers of the Holy Grail War, so they wanted to protect Anna. However, they were unable to protect Anna, so they wanted Anna to kill her and recreate the legend of the Gorgon monster. The appearance of the Gorgon meant that they had the power to protect themselves, but Wu Ming disrupted their plan. However, through Wu Ming, Stheno and Euryale found the hope of protecting Anna, so they made the request. Sister. Anna looked at Stheno and Euryale, touched. Although she was already dead, and her safety was no longer a concern, she was still happy to hear that someone cared about her. Sure enough, no matter what, my sister still loves me, Anna thought to herself. However, Stheno and Euryale stood up as if they were interrogating him. They walked to Wu Ming and looked into his eyes. So, what's your answer? The two asked in unison. I didn't want to fight the other servants. My goal is to solve this disaster, Wu Ming said in confusion, which made Stheno and Euryale a little unhappy. However, now is the time for the servants to unite. Of course, I won't abandon Anna, my ally. Wu Ming put his hand on Anna's head. Then, Anna slapped Wu Ming's hand away. Don't touch my head. Anna stared at Wu Ming with her small eyes under the hood. She was especially intimidating. Wu Ming raised his hand that was slapped away by Anna and smiled awkwardly. Stheno and Euryale smiled as well. Of course, they were laughing because Wu Ming was defeated by Anna. Wu Ming looked at his hand in confusion. That shouldn't be. May you and the others like it when I touch their heads. Did my affinity aura lose its effectiveness after becoming an assassin? Wu Ming shook his head and stopped thinking about it. By the way, you two are now someone else's servants, right? Wu Ming looked at Stheno and Euryale. That's right. Our master is a green tall hat man. Stheno nodded. She must have used the Holy Grail to cheat, Euryale said. That's how she was able to summon the 7 servants again. And it doesn't exclude the possibility that he can continue to summon servants. Wu Ming nodded. Stheno was right. After all, Wu Ming did not feel that Lev was a human being. Since he could maintain the contract of 8 servants, including Artoria, he was definitely not an ordinary person. However, it did not exclude the possibility that Lev had placed the contract on Artoria's heart, which was the Holy Grail. You wrap this chain around me to prevent my master from using the command incantation, right? Euryale raised her small hand. The silver-white chain with golden light decorated her like a priceless accessory. Ah, I have one too. Is this a slave's chain? Stheno also raised his wrist and said with a wicked smile. Although it's a simplified version of Enkidu, it's still a divine weapon. It's still effective against gods, Wu Ming explained. Although I wanted to kill you to be safe, I still had some questions to ask you, so I kept you two alive. Now it seems that you two are really a burden, Wu Ming said with disdain. Don't talk about my sister like that. Anna glared at Wu Ming angrily. Her face under the cloak was full of dissatisfaction. Then, Sakura Madu woke up. Wu-Ming was able to escape from Anna's glare. Wu-Ming even wondered if he would be petrified if Anna glared at him for a while longer. Wu-Ming then took out some high-level Loon runestones and sealed Stheno and Euryale's mana. He also added a series of negative buffs to their attacks. Of course, Wu-Ming only did this after they agreed. After all, Wu-Ming was not a bad person. Cough, cough. Soon, Olga Marie finished giving Roman her orders. Anyway, you will replace me as the commander of Chaldea for now. We'll talk about it after I return, Olga Marie said with an imposing tone as she flipped her hair. Yes, sir. Roman was also affected by Olga Marie's imposing manner. He nodded solemnly. However, Wu-Ming shook his head regretfully when he heard Olga Marie's last sentence. After all, Olga Marie was already dead. She could now be considered a heroic spirit. Other humans could enter the heroic spirit palace after death, but Olga Marie would disappear after this crisis was resolved. Moreover, she would truly die. She wouldn't exist in the heroic spirit palace. If possible, I'd better save her. Wu-Ming thought to himself. No matter what, Olga Marie was still half a servant to Wu-Ming. Even if she had bad intentions at the beginning, Wu-Ming now understood Olga Marie. He felt that Olga Marie was still a good person. If he could save her, he should. Are you done with your discussion? Can you answer my question? Wu-Ming and the other servants walked towards Olga Marie, Gudatsi, and the others. Stheno and Euryale naturally followed Wu-Ming. As for Anna, she followed her sister. This resulted in Olga Marie, Matthew, and Gudatsi standing on one side, while Wu-Ming, Stheno, Euryale, Anna, and Anna's master, Sakura Madu, stood on the other side. The situation was slightly serious. Wu-Ming had 4 servants on his side, while Olga Marie only had Matthew, a demi-servant. At best, he was a human with the power of a servant, but at worst, he was a half-servant. Looking at the slightly tense scene, Roman on the other side of the screen gulped. What do you want to know? Olga Marie calmly looked at Wu-Ming, her nominal servant. Please tell me where you came from and your intentions. I will judge whether you can get our help based on your answers. Wu-Ming looked into Olga Marie's eyes. Although with Wu-Ming's hearing, he was almost as good as Stheno and the others when they were pooping. Is this why you volunteered to be my servant? Olga Marie couldn't help but ask. That's not the point. The point is the name you called when you were in danger, Leviticus. When she heard the name Lev from Wu-Ming's mouth, Olga Marie's eyes suddenly shrank. You know or no, Rafe? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.